Then, John, I think we're good. You give me the thumbs up.
I heard you. No, he was not and started playing push buttons. I never know.
Good evening. Welcome to our city council meeting tonight on July 13th, 2022. We will get started with Pledge of Allegiance by Bobby DeLuca.
Everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We appreciate that. We will go on to item 4.2, City Council comments and recognitions. Anything from the body? If not, I'll take this one then. Let me pull up my... Tonight we are going to honor our recent Grand Marshals from our recent Town Days Parade. Miss Michelle Bagley and Miss Raquel DeLuca. So I just read a little bit about them here. Ladies, do you want to come stand? Do you want to come up to the podium so everybody knows who you are? I can see you.
I'm thinking nobody's called us Miss for a long time.
I love it. Michelle Bagley and Raquel DeLuca have been invested in improving the quality of life for Harriman residents for many years. They have often been called the dynamic duo because they were always seen together as they volunteered and served Harriman in a variety of capacities before and after Harriman's incorporation. Appointed in 1999 to serve on the first city council after incorporation with Mayor Crane, Jerry Walker, and Brett Wood, they both served on various city, county, and state boards, including Wasatch Waste and Recycling and the UTA. Michelle served on the committee to incorporate, and Raquel served as a member and as a chair on the Planning Commission. While their political service ended in approximately 2010, they continue to serve the Harriman community. Side by side, this duo served at every Harriman event for over 20 years. Anyone who knows them know they champion sports and art events for the Harriman youth, and they specifically served and helped develop the Harriman Rodeo, Parade, and Town Days. It has been said it is a privilege and a duty to serve your community. Michelle and Raquel understand this, and they took their individual service to the next level by serving and growing together as Harriman residents and friends. Their service has inspired many and has set wonderful examples for many to aspire to. Harriman was grounded with an attitude and an expression of volunteerism. Michelle and Raquel embody this sentiment, and we are indeed grateful for their service. So ladies, thank you, and we recognize you tonight as our Grand Marshals for their recent parade. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Oh, pictures? Oh, pictures.
Oh, no. No. Yeah.
Going to attend the play.
Enjoy.
Thank you, ladies. Enjoy the play tonight. Okay, any other comments or recognition tonight? That will move on to public comment portion of our meeting tonight. I'll read this before we open the public comment as a way of how to go about this. Audience members may bring any item to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agendas and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. So at this point, we'll open it for public comment, and you will have 2 minutes. So anybody is welcome to step forward at this time.
I don't want to be the first one, sorry. So my name's Tim Marshall, council members, mayor. Some of you have met and spoken with in the past. So about a year ago, I purchased a golf cart to drive around in the neighborhood and have some fun with. With that, I talked to the incoming mayor, some of the council members, and with the passage of HB 184, I was optimistic, and speaking with the police department and talking to a couple officers, they said, look, we have bigger fish to fry. If you're being respectful, we don't really care. Unfortunately, it looks like some others in the community have not taken that type of advice. They didn't drive the way they were supposed to, and so it looks like the Harriman Police Department's had to take the hard stance on it of, nope, it's not allowed, not legal, first time's a warning, second time's an impound. Fully understand that, fully respect that. That being said, my ask of the council is to not necessarily fully legalize it. I know that's been brought to you during working sessions. Not looking for that. I think that is very not smart. The one thing I would recommend is things like baby steps, right? Something like, regulating it so that it's not the wild, wild west. Certain age requirements, 12 and older, no more than 4 occupants, 25 miles an hour speed limit, streets only, not on sidewalks and trails and, those types of things. Things that are very smart and restrictive, but still allow kind of a freedom for me to go pick up an item from a neighbor, for dinner one night, right? So with that, I know the question comes with safety. My daughters have been driving these for the last year. They're very safe on it. I feel more comfortable with them on that than a motorized scooter, a bike. They're bigger, they're more visible, and I think overall safer in some of those circumstances. So again, I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, Mayor, you know how to get in touch with me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. Okay, at this point, we will move on then to item 6, our city council board and committee reports. Sherry, I'll start with you since I know you have one.
Well, we're lucky tonight to hear from some of our youth council. They're here to report on their legacy projects. One of the requirements in our charter is that they have to perform a legacy project every year. They can work in a group, a small group, or individual, and they just need to do something that will be meaningful and impactful to the community. And then they're supposed to come and report to us on what they did, and a few of them are here tonight to report. So I'm going to let you guys, do you guys want to just figure out amongst you who wants to go first and come on up? Okay, flip a coin. And just introduce yourself to these guys when you get up here, Jake.
Alrighty, so I'm Jacob Dienhover. For my legacy project this year, I decided to get a bunch of my friends and we weeded along this rock strip by our neighborhood over at Indian Hollow. And yeah, we basically just took a couple hours. We went out there, we weeded the whole thing. And I think it helped a lot that it looks a lot nicer now when driving by. I had a couple neighbors come out and be like, oh, thank you. It looked horrible before, so yeah, that was basically it.
Thank you, Jake. He was one of our seniors, and he's moving on now. We've appreciated him.
Thanks, Jake.
Hi. Hello. All right. Okay. So I'm Nathan. Uh, this is Nicole, and this is Maddie. And there was supposed to be another person here, but she wasn't able to come today. So basically, we all work together for our legacy project. So this is it.
So we wanted to tackle part of our problem, and that is period poverty. 1 in 4 teens in the U.S. has missed school due to a lack of period supplies, and 767,397 women from the ages of 12 to 44 live in Utah. So 1 in 8 of those women live below the federal poverty line, which makes it a lot harder for people below the federal poverty line to be able to access feminine hygiene products, which are essential.
So a solution that we proposed was to create a drive for feminine hygiene products as well as like other hygiene necessities. And we did this by donating and raising money for the Geraldine E. King Women's Shelter.
So our goal basically was to raise money and receive donations from the community and from the library, from our community, to benefit homeless women in Salt Lake City.
So first thing we had to do was plan it out and figure out what we were doing. So we went to the library and sat together as a group and kind of figured out what we were gonna do. We designed and printed posters to hand out in the neighborhood so that we could hand out to different homes. And then we made a box for donations to be dropped off at the library. And then we also were able to make more of an online thing, which is.
So along with this, we created a GoFundMe. And by doing this, we were able to have people donate and kind of raise money in a more quick and accessible way because they could do it directly through their phone instead of like going out to the store and having to buy those donations that we were requesting. And in total, we were able to raise a total of $140.
So what we did afterwards is we gathered all the donations from the library, from the posters we put around the community, and we used the $140 to buy feminine products. And so in a total, we were able to gather 600 plus products.
So we drove down to the Geraldine E. King Center that's downtown and dropped it all off. And the workers said that our donation was one of the biggest they had received in one go. So we were really excited about that. And we were able, it took a couple trips loading it off from my car, but we were able to get it all in, and it was lots of bags and it was awesome.
So basically, we learned that organizing a drive is a lot harder than we expected. And it's even harder to get like a bigger part of the community to participate, but also it like creates a bigger reward in the end. And we all had to work together and focus and apply like our individual skills into this project. And we kind of like were able to realize that we can make a difference as youth in this community and in our society.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. We love it. Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
I probably could not say enough good about these kids. These kids are simply service-minded people that want to do good in their communities, and they work so hard. You see them at all of our events. They take a tremendous burden, in my opinion, off of our staff by participating in all these things, not to mention the other 100 things they're in different service capacities in their schools and in their extracurricular things. So a big shout out to the youth and to all this wonderful youth council and all that they do for our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Thanks, you guys.
Yep, thanks, guys. Yeah, I'll look for any other board and committee reports at this point.
Mine's not as interesting as that, but the sewer board met at the end of last month. No major news from there, just a standard board meeting. We did go through the budget and our tax rates and approve those as the entity. And no, we are not raising rates this year. So the other board meeting I had just last night, the OHV committee, they looked at trails and access and maps, and we've got a lot of brainstorming still yet to do, and lots of work yet to do on that. But it is something that's a lot of citizens are passionate about, and we have a lot of interest in that. So that's it. That's my board reports.
Okay.
I'll wait until, I'll do my water agreements.
Down later, down, further on the agenda. Okay.
Yeah,
Jared, anything from you? What's that? You're good. Okay, I've got a few reports, a couple of things to report on. Myself and Nathan and Tammy and Justin met with Congressman Owens last Friday. His team has been working on securing some funding, a little over $3 million for a water project. It just cleared the first hurdle in the House of Representatives and now goes on to the next funding hurdle, which is the Senate. So we'll hear from that. We should hear from that in the next couple of months, but it's looking promising. Usually what gets through that to that point usually gets approved. So we're looking forward to hopefully bringing that in for a water project. Also, get to the other one. While I'm looking the other one up, I always forget to mention this in the other one. I wanted to give a shout out especially to Wendy for her help with the Collegiate Rugby Shield. That was a couple Saturdays ago. For those of you who didn't know, there was a big rugby competition held here in Harriman out of the facility, the soccer facility. It was broadcast on FS1, so broadcast nationally, not just once, but it was on multiple times, replays several times throughout the week, and Harriman City was front and center as far as we were all over the broadcast, and they highlighted a lot about the city going on. It was great exposure for our city to hopefully the hope with that is that bring exposure for other events that could be out here that could bring some good economic impact to the city. So, and Wendy was out there, and Teddy, you as well, out there in the sun all day. We had a blast, though. It was a great event. So we appreciate the Utah Warriors and assisting with that too, and bringing that event to our community as well. Okay, that's all I have then. So we'll move on. A note here, and Jackie, tell me if we can do this. Somebody with item 10.2 needs to leave and catch a flight. 10.1. So we're wondering if we can move 10.1 to right now. I guess I just need a motion to move.
I'd make a motion to adjust the agenda to move 10.1 now.
Okay, motion by Sherry.
Second.
Second by Teddy, all in favor? Okay, so we'll move on. We'll hit item 10.1 now then.
Okay. Thank you for moving me so I can let my colleague go catch a flight. We're on for 10.1 is a discussion to present to you the proposed property tax increase for Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. Our tax rate increase will be a 7.8% increase. Our certified tax rate was a 0.000296, and our proposed tax rate is a 0.000319. As a district, we have the authority to go up to a 0.0004, but we obviously try to be respectful of trying to keep it in the bounds of our budget and what we need. This would equate to average residential property in our district is about $604,000. That means they'll have an annual increase of about $7.64. I can tell you candidly, when I first started on this board, I was confused as to why we had to do property taxes. Why don't people just, whoever's using the water, they pay for the water they use, and the rates would cover the costs, because it's about 27% of our budget is based off of property taxes. But if you think about it, if you move into a home and when you move in there, you have an expectation that you're going to have a shower, flushing toilets, running water, those types of things, right? Well, all of that infrastructure that you have the advantage of was already paid for by someone else, right? It was already a massive amount of money being paid for, and the way it gets paid for is bonds. So we bond over long periods of times, and then use the property taxes is what helps pay off those bonds to take care of the infrastructure needs that will move us way out into the future. Right now, after our meeting today, basically these next set of bonds are going to have to start paying for the next set of infrastructure. Our general manager described it as this: we are basically starting over. We're pretty much at capacity of what we have now. With the growth that we've sustained over the last 30 years, we've doubled in population as a state. And so we really are there. We're at that capacity. And so now we have to really start funding all the next layer of infrastructure for the next wave of growth that's anticipated in our state. So we have a choice. We either stop growing or we have to figure out a way to deliver water. And the only way we can do that is put in proper infrastructure. And because it's very costly and over long periods of time, that we do bonds to pay for those. And so our responsibility as a district is to come to our entities and let you know that we'll be increasing the tax rates. We will be on August 10th having a truth and taxation hearing at the district offices in West Jordan at 6 p.m. And so we obviously want the public to participate in that or come to that and provide any questions they might have to us prior to that or during that meeting so that we can answer their questions. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I don't.
Okay. I can't say like Teddy, but we do have to increase their property taxes. But obviously you can see the strain that we're under with, you know, the drought conditions. And the interesting thing about the drought conditions, and I'll give a shout out, there was an individual who thought that Utah isn't doing their part, isn't taking the drought serious and isn't taking water conservation serious. And I'd have to say that I would disagree to that. We have actually seen a great response this year and last year. The drought messaging has been heard. I would ask that we quit calling it drought messaging and call it conservation messaging, because even if we get enough water next year, we still have to conserve water because we simply don't have enough. We're the second driest state in the union. We have to preserve water, and especially if we're going to continue to grow. So I believe that we are. I believe that the way we calculate what we use as a household is different than a lot of people calculate. So we look a little bit odd compared to our neighboring states. But we're gonna maybe try and adjust that a little bit. But we're down, I think, 12% or so. We asked everybody if they would voluntarily reduce about 10%, and we're staying underneath that. So we've had a really great response, and I would just advocate for that continuance, that everybody will continue to really think about that. And it's more important that we have a good supply of water and a dependable supply of water than green lawns. I love green lawns too. And I hate walking across crunchy lawn. My lawn's kind of crunchy right now. But it's just, that's where most of our water goes, is outdoor watering in the summer. So we just have to do a better job of really understanding that, doing a better job as cities and municipalities and making sure that's in our general plan, that when we're making land use decisions, water use is at the top of those decisions, and it never has been. It was only required in the last 2 years from the legislature, which is crazy to me in a state that we've incentivized growth for years and years, but we've never talked about water. So I would just add that to my report, that we continue to do a great job that we're doing to conserve water and keep cutting back, and we'll get there together. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry.
Okay.
And thank you. I didn't catch a name. I didn't. Do I need?
Sorry, this is Dave Martin, my great colleague. Go catch a flat.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate.
That don't know, Sherry doesn't just represent Harriman on that board. That's a state-appointed position. She represents Riverton, Harriman, and Bluffdale.
We appreciate all you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item back to 7.1 then. Presentation of the annual fraud assessment. Kyle.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will keep this brief tonight. The State Auditor's Office requires us to present to you, as the governing board, our fraud risk assessment every year. You may remember in January, Alan, my co-finance director right now, did bring the fraud risk assessment to you for a presentation. We've decided to move it closer to the fiscal year end moving forward, so it more aligns with the fiscal year when we do the evaluation of the assessment. So just a brief overview, and I know you've probably heard this not too long ago. As I said, it's required by the State Auditor's Office to be presented to you. We do file that with the State Auditor's Office, and anyone can go online to their website and look at these assessments for any entity that the state auditor collects data for. As I said, the auditor's office did create it as a measure to help reduce risk and undetected fraud, abuse, and noncompliance in governmental entities of all types and sizes. One important thing is this is really supposed to be it's supposed to meet the needs for all types of entities, regardless of if it's a 3-member board with no staff to Salt Lake City, who has thousands of, losing my words tonight, thousands of employees. So overall, from January, we did have a slight decrease in our score. There's a few things that we can do to improve our score. However, this score does not reflect if the city really is a low risk for fraud. It's something that has to be continually evaluated and looked at. So we do have some new council members and a new mayor. There is a training that the auditor's office would like to be viewed and taken on that. So that will increase our score 20 points. Pretty simple, not a huge deal. There's a couple other things that we could increase our score on. One is we currently don't have a fraud hotline. And the second one is we don't have an internal audit function. The fraud hotline is an easy thing to at least look at to see if that would be feasible for our city. Having a formal internal audit function for a city our size probably is not feasible. The cost versus the benefit wouldn't be worth the extra cost. There are some things that we will be looking at in terms of mitigate fraud. One thing is one of our accountants has expressed a desire to take some internal audit training and look for an internal audit certification. So she would be able to help us do more internal audits and look at things a little bit closer in detail. Another thing I've done at previous employers is I've had the external auditors, when they come in to do their audit, we would also have them look at a few areas that might be of concern. To give you an example of some of those, what those might be is I've had them look in the past at purchasing cards to make sure all the processes are being followed, gas cards, that type of thing. So we can also tack on some extra audits that I've seen have been very beneficial in the past. Finally, I did want to go over what the finance department's initiatives are for the upcoming year. One thing, especially where I am new, I want to do a complete review of all of our current policies. The city does have all the recommended policies that the state auditor's office recommends. From what I've seen on my first month here is we do a very good job as a staff to ensure that those policies are being followed, so it's not just a policy that's been written and filed away in a cabinet. We're actually enforcing it and making sure those are being enforced. And as I mentioned, the accountant too is going to receive some extra training. So with that, are there any questions for me tonight?
I've got one, actually. So, sorry. Yeah. Going to prolong this. Talking about the online training, because I love it. Actually, not too bad, but it says within the 4-year term of appointment. So that would be a yes, because we're all still within that 4-year term limit.
But having a new mayor, and I believe we have a new council member, correct?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
You have to take the training before that 4-year clock starts.
You need to take it.
Okay, so that's not how that reads, but so I'm sure there's backup data on that. So, because it just says, having all governing body members completed all entity-specific within 4 years of their term appointment election date. So we still have 3.5 years to do that, how I read it, but.
Well, you do, but they probably won't give you the points until you take it.
Until you take it.
That's been our understanding. You could be correct. I'm not saying you're not correct.
Oh, no, you're good. It just reads funny.
We'll take it. So. I've helped Teddy with tests before.
I had to read it 3 times.
I got a higher score than him, yeah. So, yeah. No, you're good. I just hate missing out on 20 points. So.
We'll get there. Like I said, we still fall in the good cat. Like I said,
we're still in the low category. If you add up our score, it's still a very good score. To be honest with you, and I know it's a public meeting, it's actually the best score I've had at any other city I've worked at.
Awesome.
Okay.
Kudos for us.
Perfect. Appreciate you moving. Welcome again, Kyle. Glad to have you. Appreciate it, Kyle. Okay, move on to item 7.2, a biannual Harriman Police Department Victim Services Update. Chief and...
Mayor, Council, it says Cody. a little snafu. So I'll go ahead and introduce it tonight, if you don't mind. If I could have Lisa Supancic come up. Lisa is our victim advocate, and we are pleased to announce to you our victim services details and statistics for our annual report. So, thanks, Lisa.
City Council, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, Lisa. Thank you.
So the grant that funds my program requires that I just kind of give you an update each year as to what's going on in our city as opposed, or with our victims. So as you can see on our previous slide, it says the current number of victims that I am working with are 272 to me. So it's a fun job. Actually, it's an honor to do this job. A quick overview of what I do. I do victim safety planning with victims, not just current victims that I work with, but also ones that could potentially be victims. So anybody who calls in and has need of advice, need of information on how to get out of a situation, or for a friend or an anonymous person, I will help them. Referrals to resources, forensic exam accompaniment, if there's a sex assault or strangulation that would require DNA or evidence sampling. I assist our forensic nurses on that. Protective order guidance, I make sure everybody knows their options and knows how to get any kind of a protective order, restraining order, and no contact order. Safe house assistance, if we need to get somebody into a shelter or an emergency hotel room for a night, I'm there to help with that. Identity theft and fraud recovery, immediate crisis counseling. I don't do long-term counseling. I'm not a certified therapist, but I can do crisis counseling in a pinch. And then often I'm called on scene, either in person or over the phone, to meet with a victim. Next slide, please. Just kind of give you an overview of the last year. This is a chart of how many different victim crimes we've had. As you can see, some numbers are quite large. It is a normal trend. It has gone up from the previous year as our growth has grown, or as our city has grown. I do want to point out one thing. Down in our domestic violence, we had 180 criminal domestic violence cases, meaning that charges were submitted to our court or to the district court. And of those 180, 46 of them had a strangulation aspect to them. It's a very concerning number, and that has gone up from the previous year. That's an aspect that we take quite seriously, as it's quite dangerous, and has shown that if a person is strangled once, the likelihood of them being strangled again is quite severe.
Do you see trends with that? Like, is that just our area? Do you see that, like, trends nationally?
It's a national trend.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. You can move on to the next slide. Just to kind of show you by month the number of domestic violence cases. Domestic violence is the main area of my victims that I work with. The amount of criminal ones versus non-criminal ones. Just keep in mind, some of the non-criminal ones are also the same victims as criminal ones. We did do a study, Commander Widmer and I did a study back in November to see how many of our domestic violence cases had a mental health aspect to them, in looking at the possibility of bringing on a mental health specialist. In November alone, we had, I believe it was 16 cases of domestic violence that had a mental health aspect to them. Somebody was having a mental health crisis, and in that crisis time period, an assault occurred. Or police were called to 16 of those incidences. Of those 16, 10 of them wound up with criminal charges. So just to kind of give you a quick update. Things that I do for these things, obviously, if there's criminal charges pressed, I not accompany. I guide my victims through the court process, which is a huge area of my job, is making sure that their rights are upheld in the court process and with our prosecutor, and that they are aware of their rights and their needs are heard. So, any questions for me?
No, it's a great job.
It's a lot, I know.
It is a lot. Thank you for what you do.
Yes,
you.
thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. So I'll be back, I'm sure, again in a few months, and hopefully I'm working a lot with our mental health specialists who we hired earlier this year and our community partners, trying to hopefully make some of these numbers go down by putting practices or more resources in place to help a lot of our mental health victims who do wind up becoming domestic violence victims.
We appreciate your work, Lisa, really. It's critical. Thank you. Good, Chief? That's it? We're good? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of our meeting tonight. First item up for public hearing tonight is the public hearing and consideration for the approval of the Salt Lake County Butterfield Canyon Trails and Trailhead Project. Wendy? Oh, Wendy, oh, there.
Hello. I'm here now.
You're there.
It's like magic. I am here tonight to present on behalf of Salt Lake County, who's joining us. And I just want especially Councilmember Orn to know the last time they were here for our farmers market, it poured. Tonight they're back and it's pouring again. So every time we have them come, that's what we expect to see.
Nice, thank you. We need the rain. Appreciate that.
So we have Walt and Liz and Madeline here. I'll just go through their slides really quickly, and they're here for any questions or follow-up comments. This project has been discussed a few times. We've updated you on the Lower Butterfield Trailhead that's coming in with the Olympia project. This is just a master plan map. It kind of shows you up at the top. You can see the Lower Butterfield Canyon Trailhead, which is the trailhead we're focusing on this evening, as well as their master plan trail system. You see another Upper Butterfield Canyon Trailhead to the west there, and then how those kind of connect with Rose Canyon and Yellow Fork. This slide just gives you a little bit of basis information about how many miles of trails. We're looking at 40 miles of non-motorized trails for multiple uses, mountain biking, hiking, and equestrian use. And then we talk about the Lower Butterfield Canyon Trailhead a little bit. That parking lot will primarily be used for our trail users as well as for events that will come in to use those trails. Primarily high school mountain bike races, night races. And there's their timeline. They're looking at moving fairly quickly. The trailhead's in Greenbelt, so it's going to remain there for a little bit until it's been there for a year, and then they'll start construction. Would you all like to correct me on anything? Everything's correct, so there you go. If you have any comments or questions, we can call them up, or I can try to answer those questions for you.
This is probably really out of the blue, but it just popped into my head because in the one slide there's the wild horse grills. It's like, see those right there? The BLM Wild Horse Burrow Facility. And because I'm an equestrian person, I have had a lot of friends reach out to me concerned about the lack or wanting to make sure that there's plenty of equestrian use on these and they're not getting blocked off just because the bikes are coming on, and they want to make sure that there's plenty of that. I was wondering if you could work anyway with the BLM to utilize that facility so even the trailhead could go out of there and that would keep them separate, or no? Just because there's already an existing corral and facilities right there.
Right. Walt Gilmore, Salt Lake County Parks and Rec, I'll address that for you. We looked at that originally as we were looking at how to develop parking for this trail system, and especially equestrian, to still accommodate that. And that's owned by Rio Tinto, that property, and it was leased to the BLM.
Oh.
That lease is terminated and has gone back into controlled by Rio Tinto. So
Okay.
Rio Tinto has some future plans and did not want to allow us. We originally thought that'd be great. That'd be perfect to bring in parking in that area and access our trails, but it didn't work out in the agreement.
Okay.
So that's why the 50 acres down below is going to be the trailhead.
And I would just continue to echo, please make sure that there's adequate horse trailer parking, because I understand that it's shrinking in our area, but there are still equestrian people, and that the more and more we see it shrink and the more and more asphalt we see come in, it just minimizes the access for equestrian people. And so if you would just really make sure you continue to keep that
We
in mind.
recognize that. We're very sensitive to that use this is a multiple use, and we want all users to play friendly up there, and especially the bike community to understand the equestrians. I don't know that they do. We've visited other facilities. We visited Corner Canyon yesterday, and we still feel like even with all the signage and the regulations, there's still a learning curve there between the cyclists and the equestrians, and we're going to do our best to try and mitigate that. But in answering your question on the parking, we will have a separate parking for equestrians.
Good.
We haven't determined the total number yet. We'll be doing some surveys and whatnot to determine that.
Thank you. Okay. No, we're excited. I'm excited for this. It'll be a good facility, and we'll be able to have great bike races and whatever has to happen up there. So good job.
Good.
Thank you, Walt. Any other comments from council? Okay, at this point, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for any comments. Same standards apply to these public comments. So any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 8.1.
Motion by Teddy.
Second.
Second by Sherry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I'll look for any other comment, or I'll look for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve the Salt County Butterfield Canyon Trails and Trailhead projects.
Motion by Sherry, second by Jared. Jared? Yes. Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Thank you again for being here. Appreciate your partnership on this.
We're going to need rain every couple of days, twice a week.
Thank you for being here. Okay, item 8.2, a public hearing and consideration of an ordinance adopting an update to the Harriman City General Plan. Mr. Malloy.
Mr. Mayor, our consultant is trying to save every dollar she can for us. She's not here yet.
Okay.
We didn't want her to be here at the beginning of the meeting and have her just waiting, so she should be here. Do you mind if we rearrange and maybe go to the next items on our agenda? Or?
Okay. Yep, just look for a motion from council to move it back until she gets here. Can we make a motion like that, Jackie? Make a motion to move that back until Susie gets here?
I'll make a motion to postpone 8.2 until the presenter has arrived.
Motion by Teddy, second by Sherry. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 8.3, a public hearing and consideration of a resolution vacating an easement in the Heather Meadows subdivision.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we had a resident approach us during public comment period requesting that an easement be looked at and possibly vacated that crossed her property. So engineering staff took the time to look into that easement, and the location of this area, just to start off with, is about 13630 South and Rose Canyon Road. And so as we got looking, there are actually 3 easements that were impacted by this one. And so they were created by plat, each one of them, when the subdivisions were created. The Heather Meadows Lot 1 subdivision was the first plat to record. And it appears that the easement was put across the property just to preserve a runoff conveyance path across the farmland and the undeveloped area, in that location. And then just to the south, Sprouse Estates came in a couple years later. And these were all prior to Harriman incorporating as a city. And so Sprouse Estates came and they just extended that easement up to 6400 West. And then after Harriman incorporated in 2002, Hamilton Farms subdivided, and they continued that easement between the 2 lots, as is shown in the yellow here, to the east. And so in all, you have 3 total easements that we looked at that with development of the land uphill from this area and the runoff being captured in the roadways and into the underground storm drain system, and the configuration of the storm drain, as we looked at it, the engineering department looked at it and analyzed it, it was determined that this easement is pretty much no longer necessary for runoff, or absolutely no longer necessary. There are inlets right in front. It's not at a low point, so if the inlets did plug, the flow would continue to the north to the next inlets. There's no opportunity for the flow to go over this location. So the recommendation from the engineering department is that all three easements be vacated. There's a resolution in the packet. There's a public hearing on for tonight for this item, but that is our recommendation. To be happy to answer any questions if you have any right now.
So I've been out to this property, and it's in my district. I mean, you can definitely sense the road improvements, tell that there's proper drainage, like you were stating. And just to be clear, we're gonna vacate all three easements, the Hamilton Farms, the Heather Meadows, and the Spruces, right?
Mm-hmm. One of the alternatives that was offered in the packet was to keep the easement across the Hamilton Farms parcels. And the purpose for that was if these properties up above Heather Meadows and the other ones along there needed to drain out to the east, they'd have a path to do so. And as we looked at those properties where those easements lie, there are no structures. If they're within the setback, so there's nothing that can be built in there. It's an existing easement that may want to be kept, but is not necessary, so it'd be okay to vacate it as well, but just something to consider.
Okay, any other questions from council? Okay, we'll open the public hearing on this item now. So if you've got public comment on this item, feel free to step forward.
Heather Talena, and I'm the resident at 13633 South Rose Canyon Road, the one that came before you a month ago and made this petition so I appreciate your considering that this evening. The location of that easement cutting diagonally through my property really affects my ability to do any grading or building of an accessory building like a garage or a shed or a horse barn. Because it does cut through significantly through the property. So this will really help me utilize my property and fully enjoy it and fully be able to go forward with my plans in remaining in Harriman. I've been out there for 30 years. So, and with the road construction, we do not get storm drain water through the lot anymore. So the pond is dry. All the asparagus has died and the raspberries and everything that used to get watered. So I appreciate your consideration in this matter this evening.
Thank you, Heather. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cody Nowling. My house is the lot number 30.
Will you pull that map back up again? Hamilton Farms 30?
Yeah, the one that's got the drainage goes right in between. Like she was saying, we haven't had water go through there, so I don't think it's really needed. So I just basically reiterating what she had said, that it's really none and void, so. All right.
Perfect. You. Appreciate it, Cody. Thank you. That great feedback. Thank you. Okay, see no other comment. Look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sherry, second by Jared. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Or I'll look for a motion if.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R19-2022, vacating a drainage easements on parcels as stated. Do I have to list them out, Jackie?
Do it to be safe.
Okay, all right. Easements on parcels 32-02-153-003, 32-02-153-004, 32-02-153-005, and 32-02-153-007.
Motion by Teddy.
Second.
Second by Jared. Jared? Yes. Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Thank you all for being here and for bringing this to our attention, so we appreciate it.
Oh, that's probably true.
Susie here yet? No?
Do not see Susie yet. We'll move on to item 8.4, public hearing and consideration of a resolution to abandon right-of-way at 5700 West Main Street.
Thank you. So 8.4 and 8.5 are related items, but they're separate because they are two separate right-of-way items, but they're for the same subdivision. And the subdivision is the J&J subdivision. They have their road alignment. Well, I guess we'll talk about the location first. I always forget about this slide. So this is just off of Main Street in 5700 West. And their road alignment proposed for their subdivision does not align with the historic preserved right-of-way for 5700 West. We'll talk about 130th South, or 130th South in just a moment. But 5700 West, the preserved right-of-way is offset from the existing 5700 West portion that's south of Main Street. So that's one reason why we would recommend vacating this right-of-way. There's no way to put it in there that would meet our city ordinance standard for offset intersections. Secondly, if you did want to line it up, there's an existing home that's in the way. And so the developer that's developing the undeveloped area around this has proposed moving their portion of 5700 West to access the property further to the east in a location that meets the engineering standard offset and provides access to their property in a safe fashion. So this is shown how they're proposing to do the road and where the existing right-of-way is located. This one's pretty straightforward. From the engineering standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. This plat shows where this exhibit shows where the right-of-way, when if it were to be vacated, would go to which properties and how it would be separated out per state statute. And then this blue hatch shows the exact area that is to be vacated. It's a 99-foot right-of-way, as I said, historic, and it only goes to the property line that you can see on the north here, and then it ends. So it never tied in to anything. And so engineering's recommendation on this one is to vacate this one in its entirety.
Okay. Any questions for Blake at this point? Okay, we'll move to a public hearing then. This time we'll open the public hearing for item 8.4. Good? A lot of looking at each other. Drawing straws back there.
I'm a horrible speaker, so the reason I'm here today is to support the JJ Farm subdivision as proposed. Out of all the possibilities that I could think of for this property, I think this is the best possible scenario for the surrounding neighbors and good for Harriman City as well. So I would urge you to approve 8.4 and 8.5 as they are a pivotal point to the approval of the JJ Farm subdivision.
Perfect. Can we get your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson.
5716 West 13100 South.
Thank you, Larry.
I'm just right
there. He's right next to the, yep.
Thank you.
You did good, Larry. You're great at public.
Perfect.
Thank you.
My name's Alex Winder. I'm just here with Bowler Development, here to answer any questions. About a year ago, when we started on this project, it was a mess. I don't know how the property lines got where they are, but Blaine Butterfield has a 100-year history of it.
County people left already.
What's that?
Said the county people left already.
Oh. But anyways, so I called Jory and he said, hey, if you guys can figure out with the Butterfields a way to make it work, then we'll abandon these. So that's why we're here. So I'm just here to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Alex.
So I'm Blaine Butterfield, and I've worked with Alex here
On this particular 8.4, it only makes sense because the previous property owner closed down that right-of-way that doesn't connect those. How that happened is, a debatable history, but it only makes sense to close that where it touches me and Larry's property and then Bowler's. It makes sense, but it is tied directly with the 8.5. So I'd take that into consideration, but I'd urge you to, consider that and approve that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, see no other comment. Oh, one more. Here we go.
My name is Tarina Johnston, and I am at 5716 West, 13100 South. We built our home in Harriman 23 years ago. The population was 3,000. We weren't incorporated yet. We got married at the Harriman City Park by the first Harriman City Mayor, Mr. Crane. Back then, the Harriman City offices was a single-wide mobile home in the church parking lot. We knew Harriman wouldn't stay little for very long. Alex has worked tirelessly. He's worked so hard and so patiently with this process. And he has really worked with Blaine Butterfield a lot because his property will be impacted the most. He's worked with us a lot, and I feel like he actually cares what's going in there. And I appreciate that because I don't think that all builders and developers do that. So I think it's great. It's best case scenario for our little section of earth, and I'll go look at sheep somewhere else.
Thank you. Okay, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Jared. Second by Teddy. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any further comment or discussion? Or I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R20-2022 vacating a public street right-of-way located at 5700 West Harriman Main Street.
Motion by Sherry.
Second.
Second by Jared. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. 8.5, public hearing and consideration of a resolution to abandon right-of-way located at 13000 South, 5800 West.
Yeah. This one's a little bit, is that the right presentation? Should say 130th South on it. But anyway, this one's a little bit more complicated than the last one, mainly because the right-of-way could line up if they chose to, but it did sever some existing properties internally that weren't part of this development. So in working with their neighboring property owners, they came up with a road alignment that would provide access to the neighboring properties, and it puts a little bit of a curve in it, but it creates a little bit more complication with vacating, because it's not an entire vacation of the right-of-way that's requested here. It's a partial, and then it has some other components that we're recommending. But you can see here, 130th South, it's another 100-foot wide right-of-way, and it would line up with 130th South to the west, and it's just off of 5800 West. This slide shows how they're proposing the road to go through. And so as you can see, the hatched areas are the portions that would be vacated out of the existing preserved right-of-way. There's a standard road width that we have that's 53 feet now, and that would be preserved and then have a curve where it would dive to the south and go into a neighboring property owner, and that's the piece of property that's not included in the subdivision, and then ultimately tie into the road that you can see here labeled as 13025 South. And so this area being vacated, we're recommending vacating the portions that are shown here, and the resolution has those portions, legal descriptions in it. And then the piece that is missing between them. There's there's an easement document in your packet that has language that says the easement will be held, but the city can't use it until that property subdivides. And then when they subdivide it, it will be included in a plat. And then it would be dedicated as right-of-way at that time and constructed by the developer to connect those through. The purpose for that was we were concerned that if we vacated it and didn't preserve something across the middle, that someone could come in and put a flag lot in, and then this 13025 South would just stub to the west and never go anywhere. So we wanted to make sure that we had our connectivity and all of the good planning principles put in place for this subdivision. So with that, there's recommendation on this one to vacate the portions of right-of-way as shown on the condition that the easement is recorded across the APB and MTB trust property as shown on here. And I don't know if there are any questions on that. That one's a little bit more complicated, but hopefully I explained it well enough there.
Does this add up with what happened in that meeting that we held? Is this still in line with that meeting that we held with the residents? Okay.
Yep. As far as I know, I mean, they can get up in the public comment if there's something different, but all these documents were provided by the developer, and I'd had emails and verbal confirmation that this was what was desired by all parties.
Okay.
Does JJ Farms connect to the north?
It connects to the north through an existing right-of-way that was preserved on a subdivision that was done in like 2014.
Okay, so it will have.
There are several lots that aren't part of their subdivision right next to the church that's built there. So this road will go right in front of those homes.
It'll
Or
be a
those
throughway.
lots, future lots.
Okay, so it will have it in and out both sides.
Yep, it has access on Main Street, access on 129th, and this eventually will give access onto 5800 West.
And the existing right-of-way, there's homes in it.
Yeah, that's.
Anyway.
Yep. The county people left, right?
Right, yeah. I'm
Okay.
good.
Thanks, Blake. We'll do a public hearing then. Okay, at this point, we'll open the public hearing on this item.
I'm back. Like Blake said, this one's a little more complicated, but I'd like you to take into consideration that I don't know how much experience you have with working with a developer, but we've worked with Alex and they've been great. And this is a time where the property owner and the developer have worked together to come up with a solution. And the only reason that you don't have a dead-end right-of-way anyways is because we swapped land with Alex to make that connect. Otherwise, your right-of-way would be 53 feet away from connecting to the J&J Farms. We did that in good faith to hopefully alleviate these problems and open up for the use of the land. And the only people it really is going to affect is our land there, where it curves. The maintaining of the other one above it stays the same. Without doing that, you're almost forcing cul-de-sacs or flag lots if we ever develop it. That's just the honest truth of it. There has been a thing brought up about the water, which I agree with. Harriman City does have a water problem running down the road, but Harriman City needs to take care of that problem at 60th West, 5900 West, and 5800 West. You can't correct the problem clear down there, and you're doubling the land that it's running down, and then try to correct your problem there isn't going to work. There's no curb and gutter, there's no anything above it, and if you go up there now, you can see on that road all the dirt that's washed onto the road that run down from there. You won't be able to correct that trying to push something through ground that's not being developed. You know, that needs to be corrected, like I said, at those other streets where you have pavement and you can do something. But like I said, I'd like to just leave it with that, hey, we worked with the developer, and that's a rarity that you have landowners and developers work hand in hand and come up with solutions that work for both parties.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for involvement in this too, your willingness to meet. Thank you.
Motion?
Okay, look for a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Jared. Second. Second by Teddy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, look for a motion.
All right, I'll give a stab. Jackie, tell me if I misstep here. Motion to approve resolution number R21-2022 vacating portions of a public street right-of-way located at 138 South, 5800 West on the conditions as stated by Blake.
That the one happens,
Or that it's in the report, yeah.
Right.
but still, I think that's okay to clarify. So on the condition that the easement is given,
Record the easement first.
record the easement first and then, yep, correct? Okay, motion by Jared. Have a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Sherry. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion carries. Thank you, Jared. And thank you, everybody. Alex, appreciate your work on this. The collaboration it was impressive, so thank you.
I believe you're 8.2
We
members
now
here.
have Susie here. So we will go back now to item 8.2, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance adopting an update to the Harriman City General Plan.
This one? Yeah.
Thank you for your patience on this. And before Susie comes up and goes through her presentation and we conduct this public hearing tonight, I wish to truly express gratitude to the council. We all know this has been a challenging project. This was heard by the Planning Commission in July of last year, and they made a recommendation to the City Council at that time. As you all know, actually concurrent with that process and ongoing, following that recommendation, we were all hands on deck working on a 933-acre annexation with Olympia. And that conversation and that annexation had a significant impact on our planning in the city. And then following that, the council, we experienced an election in November, and there was some concern about moving forward until we had this present council in place to make this important decision. During the spring, I believe we've had 3 different work sessions with the council asking for direction, answering questions, trying to get very specific amendments to the proposal that the council thought was appropriate. Our consultant will be here tonight to talk with you about some of those and answering some of your questions, based on the direction that you provided. Knowing that we had a Planning Commission public hearing and that the council has the opportunity of making amendments to what was recommended by the Planning Commission. And of course, that is perfectly appropriate and typical. It was my intent, my recommendation to the previous council that when we got to this point in the process, that we would have another public hearing. We only are required by state code to have a public hearing with the Planning Commission. That's been held and satisfied. But we have agended this for additional public comment if there are any from the public. So with that said, we would like to talk with you about what is in the plan, just a quick overview, talk with you about a couple of follow-up issues on the future land use map that Susie's going to discuss with you. And then, of course, we are recommending that you conduct the public hearing. And if the council is comfortable and feels it is appropriate to make a decision to approve the draft general plan update. Of course, you also have the opportunity of approving it as proposed, approving it with additional amendments. You can also table the request. You could also deny the request, but don't do that. And of course, if the council believes that it is in the best interest of the city to table and give additional direction to staff and our consultant, just please be as specific as possible as to what you'd like to see. We've also talked about the possibility, if it's necessary, you do have the opportunity to approve just the future land use map. That's the piece that we're really anxious about, because that is the element of the plan that we need in order to start moving forward our water master plan and our streets master plan. So it is a possibility, if it's necessary, we could consider, or the council could consider a motion to approve the future land use map element, and then we could bring back the rest of the general plan with your direction at a future meeting. But Hopefully that won't be necessary. Hopefully we'll be done. Now, as you saw in your packet, this is a final draft. The text is all there, but it's not a publication draft. We still need to add in all the right page numbers. We need to add an index. We need to put in a page of acknowledgments. There's a number of images that are highly pixelated, and we need to work with our communications team to put in some better quality graphics. But the body of the text is what it is. You'll notice in your recommended motion sheet tonight, we do ask that you allow staff, as we go through a final proof, that we make any, we correct any spelling errors, we correct any formatting errors, but we won't change anything that is substantive to the plan without your direction tonight. So with that said, I'll go ahead and turn over the time to our consultant, and we'll be glad to answer your questions.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to be here tonight. As Michael said, we just have a couple slides, and mostly just to let people know, where we've been, where we are. The general plan really is based on a foundation of Harriman voices, the community, the Planning Commission, city staff, the city council. We've been to a lot of events. We've had a lot of meetings. We have this outreach recap in the plan, but just wanted to show it here tonight just to show the range of outreach formats and the number of comments and opinions that were offered during this process. So the surveys to the pop-up events to the formal open houses that we had last year, as well as some online surveys and comment forms. So there's been a lot of great input. We've taken it to heart and tried to incorporate that into the plan draft to the extent that we can. The priorities that emerged during this planning process, there were 6 of them that just kept on recurring themes throughout the process. The first, bringing in economic development opportunities. The second was preserving and enhancing the character of the Harriman community. The third was to begin providing more community amenities. The fourth was to ensure that Harriman's providing safe transportation choices. The fifth was to help facilitate additional employment opportunities within Harriman for Harriman residents. The sixth was supporting and maintaining a mix of housing types as Harriman continues to grow. These priorities are reflected in the plan in the 4 key initiatives. The first is growing wisely. The second is optimizing the open spaces of Harriman. The third is maximizing unique fiscal opportunities. And the fourth is enhancing and supporting the community and culture of Harriman. Those priorities are also reflected fairly directly in the 6 policy guide sections: economic development opportunities, community character, community amenities, safe transportation choices, employment opportunities, and mix of housing. Each of those sections in the policy guide have aims and goals, as well as primary objectives, and then a series of policies and strategies that support them. All of these elements are very integrated, so there is some repetition. For example, things that are high priorities like trails and open space show up in more than one section, and that's intentional. To move forward, we wanted to focus our discussion tonight on the future use and development chapter. As Michael mentioned, this chapter, Chapter 6, represents the land use element of the Harriman General Plan. This is one of the required elements by Utah State Code for cities to adopt. The discussion items that we wanted to bring up tonight are looking at the map that was in the council packet, and there are some changes that have been directed by staff and also just some elements that have come up as we've been reviewing it between the packet distribution and tonight. These are the categories that are in the council packet. The primary change since the Planning Commission recommendation is to that forest residential and recreational resort category. Originally, this was part of the mixed use and commercial categories, thinking that it was a correlation to the resort community zone, looking to support potentially low impact recreational resorts in the foothills. Since then, it's been switched back to more of a residential category, still potentially allowing some of those low-impact recreational resorts, but filling that gap in density and scale of residential between the mountain and canyon and the agricultural and hillside. So that's the major change in the categories since the Planning Commission's recommendation last year. The changes that have been recommended based on some direction by staff is to change the open space designation on the future land use map within city boundaries for land that is not currently owned by Harriman to one of those residential categories or other future land use categories. So what we've done in this area, roughly outlined by the circle, is to change those previous open space designations to that recreational resort forest residential category, which we had interspersed in that area. That reflects a total of about 300 acres of land, and the idea being that the city would work with the property owner as perhaps a master development agreement is emerged to say, this is where we want the open space to occur, but it's been the city staff recommendation that for showing open space on a future land use map, that should be correlated with land that is owned by Harriman City. So that is one change that's been recommended sent your packet. The second one is those matrix tables that correlate the proposed future land use categories with the zoning districts, as you see on this page. Because we made that change to that recreational resort category, before it was intended to be more heavily on the mixed use and commercial side of things, and so the categories that it aligned with from the current zoning districts were more in that mixed use and commercial section. With the reconfiguration to it being more of a residential category, we're recommending the change to the categories that you see on the right. So keeping the resort community zone, but aligning it with the forestry recreation zones 2.5 and 5. So that's one recommendation. The second is the matrix table that aligns the previous and current future land use categories with each other. Before, the recreational resort was intended to be a little bit smaller of lot size. The typical lot size was estimated to be 1 acre with an average net density of 1 acre and max gross density of 0.8. That corresponded with the previous or the current future land use categories of hillside rural residential and agricultural residential. What we're recommending is that we shift that up so that the corresponding zones or corresponding categories more reflect the previous resort recreational and the hillside rural residential. Also, the change to the average net density matching what the forestry recreation 2.5 zone is, the 2.5 typical lot size with an average net density of 0.4 and a max gross density of 0.3. The other area that we wanted to bring up for discussion is the planned community category. This was something that came out of discussions post-planning or Planning Commission and City Council, a little bit of back and forth. Previously, the Planning Commission had recommended using the future land use categories to express the vision for what was the future annexation of Olympia and potential Rio Tinto up in the northwest corner. Since then, because Olympia has been annexed, what we've done in the map that you have in your packet is assigned the future land use categories based on the land use plan that's in the master development agreement for Olympia. One of the things that we wanted to bring up for discussion is to consider translating the conceptual diagrams that are in the current draft of the plan to match the future land use categories as has been done for Olympia. This is based on some of the previous feedback from the Planning Commission to have a desire for the future land use map and this element of the plan to reflect the community's intentions, their ideas, and their vision for the future of annexation areas. And because that planned community category is very broad, the solution was to use a combination of text and conceptual diagrams, but we feel that maybe at this point with Olympia having designated categories that we can translate those conceptual diagrams into more specific land use categories and outlines like you're seeing in Olympia. So that's the last discussion item that we have. If we have any questions before we open it up for public hearing, happy to take those, or we can reconvene after public comment.
Okay, sounds like we'll go to a public hearing and then come back to you, Susie. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will open the public hearing on this item.
Hello, I'm Reed Dixon. If I represent a group, can I have 3 minutes? Is that how that works?
5.
Is that okay? Oh, 5, great.
3, I mean 3.
3, okay, 5. The 4 initiatives in the general plan, so I'm Reed Dixon, and I represent several properties in the southwest area of the city. So that's why I'm not just an individual property owner represented here. There are 4 initiatives in your general plan that were discussed here. 1 is to create healthy and safe community with diverse quality neighborhoods. 2, optimize open spaces, views, and recreation. 3, maximize unique fiscal opportunities, leveraging the city's inherent assets, and bring non-typical uses and development to the community. And 4, enhance and support community and culture through amenities and create community character. So when I read all of those things, I say, okay, great, this general plan needs to focus on accomplishing those things. And so all the designations that are on the map or described in text should accomplish those things. So the properties that I represent add up to about 900 acres. And if you look at this drawing that's on the screen, that, just guessing, represents about 10% of your city. And then if you take what's not developed yet or what's not and what can't be developed, it's even greater. It might be 20% of what's left to be developed in your city. So this is a significant area that I'm looking at as I present to you today. The current draft plan shows a couple of designations on our properties that we've never really seen before. The presentation mentioned the 27,000 people that were involved in the outreach, and we have discussed with you, most of you, what we would like to see on this property. But specific to the general plan, none of us were really asked what we would like to see in the general plan or how our property should be depicted in the general plan. Actually, just recently, I was reading about this mountain and canyon residential and the recreational resort forest, and saw on this map those designations and how they looked. I think we were designated as open space before it was realized that the city should own it before designating it as open space. I think otherwise we might be designated as open space. So I think to accomplish, we, the property owners, think to accomplish these 4 initiatives, that these designations are very rigid and restrictive and won't result in accomplishing these 4 initiatives. The LMPC designation, the large pink area that Olympia has on here, is the better designation for what we're trying to accomplish. It doesn't give, did I have 5 or 3?
We do 3. We'll give you another second.
Am I okay just to finish up?
Yeah, finish up.
Thank you.
If you could.
The designation of a large master plan community would give us tons of flexibility, tons of creativity, and allow us to do those things that you guys want to see. I've heard this commission say, what do we get? You know, the developers are always getting what they're trying to get what they want, but what happens for the city? And we think through that LMPC process that you recently adopted and specifically mentioned Malibu and Laguna as candidates for. I don't know who else will use it if we don't. So maybe you regret creating it, I don't know. But I don't think you should. I think it provides a tool, a vehicle that allows for creativity. It allows you to meet these initiatives. It does not give the developer any entitlement or any right or any leverage at all. It only opens the door or the window to meeting these objectives and creating something unique in your city. We've met recently with the camp. Over the past 3 weeks, we've accomplished a lot of things with Camp Williams. I wrote an email to Wendy yesterday. I was hoping it was shared in some of the meetings we had today and with you before now. I don't know if it has been because it was kind of short notice. But we've met with them and General Green and others at the base are ready to move forward with some of the remedial things that we've suggested, some things that would mitigate noise and so on. Financially, we're ready to move forward. So thank you for the little extra time, but I think that it would be a lost opportunity if we designate this the way it's shown now, and I think you would have more options and more opportunity if you designate it as LMPC.
Appreciate it, Reed. Thank you. Okay, see no other comments, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
By Sherry.
Second.
Second by Teddy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want any further discussion or feedback for, what do you need from us? Just further, do we want to discuss those two?
Right, we need to have direction from the council if you would like us to make those two specific future land use amendments. And of course, accordingly, we need to adjust the tables as our consultant showed you in that presentation tonight.
I'm going to pull those back up. Let's start with one. Let's go to two. Two, I think, is probably a little more. Can we start with two and go back to one? So any concerns from council about this change?
About leaving it pink.
Actually, would you go to
Go to the
the
next
other, there's another slide that shows the Olympia. Yeah, this one actually does okay. What was in your packet was on the right-hand side of this screen where we put in the Olympia land use, so that we are forecasting or sharing with the community more accurately what is happening within that part of the city. And then basically this is Kennecott property that's in a future annexation area, right? This is outside the city limits. The commission wanted to communicate to potential development partners or property owners, if it were to be annexed in the city, that their recommendation to the city council is that we signal that we want to have multiple land uses within this part of the city, not just a single land use, not all industrial or all residential or all commercial. We wanted to have a mixture of land uses. That's really what we're trying to recommend. And then, of course, they also want to make sure that we're also asking for open space, which we typically get through some type of MDA or planned development. So that was the intent of the Planning Commission's recommendation to you. Since the Planning Commission saw that, of course, we started talking heavily about the MDA with Olympia, and a previous council told us to change that whole area to the purple. So we made one change away from the Planning Commission recommendation to the purple zone. Then we went through the annexation with Olympia. So, essentially a part of that we know has been planned. So it's what do we want to do with the remaining potential annexation area? Do we want to signal to those property owners or that potential development, that we want to have a mixture of uses? Yeah, and if we do that, then we can eliminate this planned community category in our future land use plan, because this is the only purple that's left right now.
I personally love that idea because I do not like that designation, never have and never will.
Do you like it on the left?
I do.
And I do too.
We would make that, we would fit that in basically how you see it, the rest. It wouldn't be a bubble diagram, right? We would translate that into a breakdown of land uses. So that would be our recommendation.
Like later on tonight, we're doing that recommendation, that resolution. Are we concerned about layouts on here with this street? No, because that's not necessarily binding, right? That's because we're more land use, correct? Not, okay.
This is just general.
Okay, just making sure that that's not going to create a different signal than what. Okay. Because I do prefer the left too. I'd like to signal specific uses as we go into some future meetings.
And it is, again, it's outside of the city limits. It's just really communicating information.
Yep.
I think if we can paint a clear picture for what we anticipate, we might get what we asked for.
Okay. So that's one of the areas. So again, if you make a motion to recommend approval, we'd want you to specify that in your motion. You move to the other.
We've got the thing right here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
FR.
So here we had open space, and originally I had instructed our consultant, based on my experience, that it's really difficult as a city. If you master plan open space on property you don't own, you better be prepared to buy it, right? I mean, if you don't really want that developed, there's no way you can stop it from being developed, right? Unless you control it, right? So that was a big change that we made in this version of the general plan. If you go back to our older general plan, that's not what we did in that plan. But there were some areas that we interpreted as being really undevelopable, right? Steep slopes, or properties that we thought maybe at one time just would never be anything else but open space. But in the end, it was the direction from the administration that no, let's follow that model of mapping open space on properties that we essentially control. And so the direction was to revert that back to a low-density forest, a designation that would be consistent with this forest recreation, right? The forest residential. Yeah. So that is a change from what was in your packet, right? Because we did have open space inside that circle, that number 1.
So currently, the only thing that's designated open space is because we own it, and it is open space.
Or it's BLM.
Or, I mean, on the end here.
Right.
Okay.
And this general plan recommendation is essentially consistent with the FR 2.5 zone, if you look in the land use table, right?
And it's a mix so that, you know, instead of just one or the other, it's a combination of the Mountain Canyon residential and the forest residential, which together they overlap, you know, in their potential densities and uses. The idea with that recreational resort was to try to find the place within that area that was felt would be the best area to bring infrastructure up and develop to some degree. And that's why that density is lower and was sort of clustered in that certain area.
Okay. I'd like to hear the council's thoughts on this area. Is this what we envision this? For me, this is an FR, I'll speak for myself, this is an FR 2.5 zone for me. Just as it is on here, that's where I'm at. Which matches this current drawing.
I would agree with you, Mayor. I think the plan is correct as is, as the recreational forest area and the Mountain Canyon residential area.
I know we've talked a lot, we've been through a lot of meetings with the development partner up there, trying to look at different project and different visions and things up there. And the difficult thing is, I don't know that we're to the point of making a solid decision, because there's still a lot of unanswered questions as far as numbers and does it work and what does it cost the city, those types of impacts it has to us. I know that there is always a pathway available if at some point it makes sense and we like something and it pencils for the city to take on those kind of responsibilities. There's always a pathway to come in and amend this and make it that way. But in my mind, until I see that, then it seems like it should stay FR type of zone too. And it seems like it should stay this low, low development kind of area, unless I see something different that shows me otherwise.
I think that's a good way to put it, too. Yep.
Let everybody else go first, because what I'm going to say is probably going to make people mad on all sides. Nothing to add on the other area we talked about. This one for me, I guess this explains some of the communication I got earlier today. I had questions about. To kind of put it another way, I agree with what Sherry said. Part that's going to upset people. I'm trying to think how to say this so I don't really tick people off. But in the 6.5 years I've sat up here and the couple years before that involved as a community organizer, I have never seen this body ever stick to a general plan, ever. Requests come in and it gets changed every time. I've usually voted no to most of them, but it gets changed every time. So it doesn't mean that a pathway is closed or that this body would be saying no to any proposals. The comments I've made regarding that area and the obstacles to get there, to me, remain until those obstacles are cleared. Then, yeah, I think for all the discussions we've had, FR25 makes sense for the general plan. But it's the general plan, right? It's not the zoning. It's not in concrete. It's saying this is, as things stand, this is what we have to look at, right? If things change, some of those hurdles we've talked about are cleared, then we can amend this, right? As we would with, no matter if anything's ever done there, you're going to probably, I don't know, maybe you will develop under the FR25 as things are. To me, that fits. But if things change, then absolutely that can be adjusted, both the general plan and the zoning. But there's a lot of, at least as far as I know, those hurdles haven't been cleared yet, and we're not far enough along in that process to designate this as anything else. As I stated, as far as that other zone that was mentioned, I absolutely despise it. I don't want to say hate, that's a strong word, but that probably applies to, I never wanted to see it in the first place, and I don't think it has any place anywhere.
And just a comment, I think that's like when that future scenario does come to the council, that's where you can rely on other aspects of the plan, as the commenter made. So what are the key initiatives? And if those changes that are proposed by the applicant reflect those initiatives and the council and planning commission agree, then that's your reason to make that change, because it's supporting some of those key initiatives and the vision of the plan that is sometimes challenging to reflect on a map at this point in time, where things are very unknown.
And Jared, I completely understand, and even going through the large master plan, it took a while to understand that code-based planning and understanding I think it has its place in the right, and I think when we did discuss it, to Reed's point, this was a property that was mentioned as an opportunity, but that doesn't mean it was necessarily going to be applied to this area. It was something to be looked at, and as we've looked into it more, that's fine, we can continue down that path, but as everybody said, I don't think we haven't met a threshold to change this away from that, towards that, at this point right now, so it could be a good use in that, down the road, but not on this parcel for me right now.
Side note, I understand lots of frustrations with the process to get here. I have those same frustrations and things, and hopefully we can talk about some of those things and work towards something that works there. But as far as the general plan itself goes, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Any other areas that council was concerned about that you'd like to amend? This is this long process.
I've had some constituents and neighbors talk about it, and they're very pleased with the retention of the ag land and the commercial corners and a lot of key points that we've kind of really honed in on. And so all the feedback that I've received personally has been in the positive of how this looks right now.
And as we know, but there's been some concern that this update to the general plan will have an immediate effect on property rights. This does not change the zoning rules. Of course, the zoning is what governs development and property rights. So yeah, this is just really a representation of a vision that guides us in the future.
Thank you for that clarification, because those are the concerns that my constituents have had also, is simply that, yep, but it's just going to change. You're just going to see it all wash away and change, and it won't, as long those kind of things are already preserved. Those are part of the zoning that they're currently in. So thank you for that clarification.
Nathan, you saying yes? You think it's a good time to bring that up?
No, I think right now we're talking about a general plan. I would say the large master plan community is a zone. It applies over Olympia. It doesn't necessarily have to show up in this plan. I think some of those other conversations we've had, those will come to fruition as you've all talked. If things get answered, then that will all come about. Certainly, councils has all the options in front of them tonight, but I think there's still a lot to be discussed about some of these areas. As you say, people request changes all the time, so it won't stop just because you adopt this plan. Will undoubtedly continue.
Couple of comments, just clarification, just as I was looking through the packet. And again, I think this is just more to your point. I think it's more technical. It's the stuff you can make after, but a lot of the maps within the body did not match this new updates that we've made in this. So just, again, I think that's a technical issue that would fall under
Right.
the motion we're going to make.
Once the council, if you make a decision on the draft master plan, then obviously that filters down through the tables, right? We'll update the tables accordingly to match the land use plan.
And we'll also clarify in the document that those individual category maps, once the plan is adopted, they'll reflect the plan at that time, but they will be for reference only. And just noting that the current future land use map is the map to refer to for specific and current designations. But at the time of the plan, that's where that category was distributed throughout the city. And that was the goal of those diagrams, is to be reference diagrams.
So for clarity, you could reference the tables that were presented or shown to the council tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or I could just say with the changes detailed by staff in their presentation.
Yeah, there you go.
Jackie?
You good with that, Jackie?
Lots it.
Don't forget option 2.
Okay, well, I think those are the areas we've been talking about, the making focus. So, Susie, thank you. It's going to be weird not seeing you around, coming to our meetings as much. It's been 5 years, right? 4 years of this. So, but thank you both for your work on this. This will be nice to have behind us. And
in a year
moving
from now,
forward.
we'll start again because it'll be 5 years in.
Right. Okay, well, I'm comfortable with the motion for the whole thing. I don't think there's any concerns about text or anything, so I'm comfortable. So I don't know, I'll look for a motion at this point.
All right. Motion to approve ordinance number 2022-30, a comprehensive amendment to the Harriman City General Plan for the present and future needs of the city and for the growth and development of land within the city, with the following conditions: correct any spelling, grammar, formatting, non-substantive technical errors prior to publication, and the changes detailed by staff in their presentation.
Including the Olympia. Do you want to specify that maybe? Or do you think the presentation?
You need to specify?
Including specifying that change to the Olympia, or north of the annexed.
The future annexation.
The future annexation.
And that's probably reflected by the third bullet
By the presentation.
on the slide.
Okay, if we're good with that. Okay, motion by Jared.
Second.
Second by Teddy. Sherry.
Yes.
Jared.
Yes.
Teddy.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to item 9, consent agenda. Look for a motion or any comments on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Sherry, second by Jared. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Move on to item 10.2. Discussion and consideration of a proposed amendment in Title 10 Land Development Code to create a major corridor sign overlay zone.
Okay, back to something a little more typical for us tonight. This petition, or this draft ordinance, is in response to a privately initiated petition, a development partner who's interested in getting or gaining greater sign visibility for commercial development in the city. In response to that, we worked with the Planning Commission and kind of amended the initial proposal into an overlay. That was not the initial request from the applicant. However, we have, the applicant has been aware of the changes to the application and the Planning Commission's recommendation, and they've been fully supportive of the Commission's recommendation to you tonight. So again, there's two parts. There's a text amendment that's being proposed. If that is approved, then the next step would be to apply the overlay to our zoning map. So these are our current sign maximums that we have in various commercial zones in the city. Typically, our commercial zones, if you have a grouping of properties, you have multiple pads, you can do a plaid and center sign, and the height of that sign is 16 feet. So a lot of our commercial centers, without some type of augmentation, that's what we're typically seeing around the city. Also, monument signs. And monument signs have a 6-foot height. Monument signs are only allowed in the M1 zone. That's the only type of sign you can have, is a monument sign in the M1. In the MU2, you can do a plan-centered sign, like here in the town center. You can, even through the MDA, you can have a little bit taller sign, 25 feet max. Auto Mall, we included some specific sign regulations that allowed up to 50 feet high along Mountain View corridor, and there is a width limitation of 15 feet wide. So those are all current sign regulations. The amendments, the general amendments to the sign code that are being proposed are essentially reduced setbacks so we can get the signs closer to the right-of-way, greater restrictions on illumination and brightness than what we typically have in some of our other zones, flexibility in the dwell, like how long that image remains and the transition times, and then electronic signs along Mountain View corridor, just essentially authorizing that those could be installed in that corridor. So on the reduced setbacks, there's a concern if the sign is perpendicular to or in parallel to a residential zone. You may recall we talked about this on the last sign amendment. So it's specifically allowed if it's 150 feet away and it's perpendicular to a residential zone. So we're trying to keep the light from shining directly into a residential zone when we have that requirement. As we talked about, there's greater restrictions on illumination and brightness, so it's reduced down to 0.3 foot candle. And on that flexibility in dwell and transition times, the proposal is 8-second dwell time, a 3-second fade transfer. And then signs along Mountain View corridor have a different requirement, 7-second dwell time and an instantaneous transition, a 225-foot setback to residential dwelling. So it's a larger setback. Obviously, it's a larger sign. So some of the clarifications that were recommended is if the sign is within 150 feet of Mountain View corridor or an arterial, the display area is at least 6 feet above the grade, or in that condition. When you have those conditions, then the distance to the residential is 225 feet to the residential dwelling that's parallel to the sign. Now, these are some examples. This is the Zions Bank sign that we currently have in our community. You can see the scale of that compared to Lee's. Again, we were looking at those for models as we were drafting this proposal. In fact, a lot of the language is exactly the same as what we see in our other sign overlays that we have for Village, the Village mixed-use sign overlay that was adopted last year. And then that was based on the sign overlay that we did for the Zions Bank Stadium. That's in City Code. So for comparison, again, here's the RSL sign at 500 feet. There's that sign area. This is Lee's sign at 500 feet. Now the RSL sign, the Zions Bank Stadium sign, is a little bit bigger. As you can see, it's a little bit different. So when we're looking at all of these standards, we're looking at how does it comply with the general plan? Does it achieve the general plan? Is it in harmony with existing development? Does it have an adverse effect on property? That's why you see all this regulation on distance and whether it's parallel or perpendicular to residential areas. And really the adequacy of service, and this is dealing with making sure that we're not impeding anything in our easements or preventing like utilities. So they can't locate in a utility or encumber these easements. The applicant request was to amend regulations in the M1 and C2 zone. Again, they wanted to have something that was similar to the lease sign. As I stated earlier, the staff, working with the Planning Commission, we amended that proposal and recommended this overlay zone for state corridors. And major corridor sign overlay is what we've called this tool. You can see a couple of examples that were prepared by our applicant. Now this is a planned center sign in the M1 zone, so you have to have 3 acres or more of contiguous property, multiple tenants. The sign area itself, the display area is 200 square feet max and 16 feet tall. And 1 sign per frontage. And again, as we mentioned, this is allowed in the C2 zone and in the MU2 zones. Zone requirement of the new zoning overlay, you would have to have at least 20 plus acres, contiguous acres of commercial, manufacturing, or mixed-use development. It can only be in these commercial zones, including the AMSD, which is the auto mall. So this would further amend or further expand the sign options within the AMSD. Again, you have to have 200 feet of direct frontage on a state-owned corridor, which would include Redwood Road, Mountain View Corridor, Porter Rockwell. If we had future state right-of-ways, we would need to look at amending the zoning map and placing the overlay if we wanted to along additional state right-of-ways. And it would follow a conditional use process, which, as you know, would go to the Planning Commission for final approval. This is just a restatement of the standards that were found in your packet. We are looking at materials, of course, square footage. There's a combined square foot area. So if there is a static display and an active changeable copy, an electronic display, you still have a maximum combined area of 800 square feet. And we also are saying that you can't extend any closer than 5 feet from a property line. So if this were approved, the proposal that you would see next in our next public hearing and presentation is that these are the areas that we've mapped out that would qualify for this new sign under the overlay. So these are the properties that the overlay would be applied to. So again, the Planning Commission made a recommendation following a public hearing. They voted 5-0 to recommend approval of that proposal to you tonight.
Okay, any questions for Michael? You want to bring it up? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I sent this over to Blake earlier, actually to the and the admin. And I know it's a brand new sign and they're going through some changes and some updates and some corrections. Who manages that after the fact, say in 6 months or 4 years? If they're the brightness, the signage, the perpetual 8 seconds or 7 seconds, who maintains or manages that?
So it would be the sign owner. And in these scenarios, this is going to be a sign that will be providing advertising for multiple tenants, right? So there's going to be some type of master developer or center, somebody who owns the overall center for the project, and they would retain ownership of that, and they would have that responsibility. Could they, by some agreement, offload that responsibility to a third party? Of course, there's nothing in our ordinance that really governs how that is managed or regulated. But typically, we would expect to be the sign owner.
And then we keep them in compliance by code enforcement or?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Was that sign
Yeah.
too, is that sign too bright?
That, it's definitely too bright. It's definitely not 3 candles, so.
Yeah, yeah, and there was an issue with, during the day, there's a brighter.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then you know that it's dimmed
probably
at
the
night.
photocellular
They didn't dim
timing,
it, right?
yeah.
The Lee's signed recently. Yeah, there was not a dimming. And we were told it was an oversight, it was a human error,
Yeah.
you know, in the process, and we've communicated
I don't know
that
if
with
it's
them.
fixed yet. I haven't driven by it. But
Yeah.
Yeah, they're working on it.
Yeah.
Being honest, we don't have a resolution on that yet, other than
Yeah.
They're aware.
They're aware, it's supposed to dim at night. I know Blake had a conversation with them, so.
You can see it from my house, I think.
I don't do it.
And they are working with the HOA next door, is what they told
Is
me.
that,
So
and I think that's where most of the complaints generated from.
the only
And then
housing
the driving, the drivers, yeah, I mean, it's pretty bright at night, obviously, so.
We were told that they have like a timing system, but of course, the time of daylight is not always the same. And so I think they were adjusting it manually, is what it seemed like they had indicated to us, and we
that's
were
what they'd
wondering.
been told. The thing is, the sign was done by Yesco, and then the billboard's done by Daktronics, and so they're working with Daktronics. I don't know if there's a computer chip shortage that caused the issue. That's kind of what it sounded like to me, is they might need some pieces to help their software work with their hardware.
Such a great excuse, right?
Yeah.
I was at Lee's today, and they would like us to stop calling it the Lee's sign, because they're getting a lot of complaints. It's the Academy Village sign.
Yes, that's
Because Lee's
true.
didn't put up the sign, so.
Thank you.
They are very,
I
they're getting a
apologize.
lot, no, it's the whole community's calling it the Lee's sign, because
Yes,
it's the only,
but that is correct.
it's the only one on.
It is for that entire center.
But Lee's didn't put up the
Yeah.
sign. They're not,
Yeah.
they're getting all the grief.
No, question on, I assume a lot of these newer signs are going to be transitional digital signs in the future. That's why we're coming to this, obviously. How are we with the low light emittance or preserving the night sky, those kind of scenarios? Is all this in compliance with those recommendations?
We primarily were looking to those standards that were required by the state for state corridors, which does not necessarily reflect dark sky objectives, right? There's probably a different set of standards that we would want to look at if that's our value as a community. But we would probably need to look at other things in the city too.
Oh,
besides
for
just
sure.
signs,
I think that ship
right?
has sailed,
No,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
we just get asked on that kind of
Yes,
stuff, so yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And then our new city signs are going to comply with the new code or whatever we need to as well? Our new monument signs?
If they fall within this overlay, although you could say that they were grandfathered because they were, approved previously. And again, basically what this approach is saying, we already have some development partners that have this advertising tool available to them because we've given it to them through these overlays. Along comes another party, another development partner who comes to the Planning Commission and says, I'm trying to develop my property and I think it's really important that I get more visibility. So the conversation that the commission and staff starts having with this applicant, this developer, what do we want to do as a community? Do we want to, really, it's pretty amazing, Harriman. As a newer community, you have historically really had very low, you have these monument signs, right? You're not West Valley, you're not Orem State Street, you don't have all these pole signs everywhere. You've really minimized visual clutter. So your baseline is you've been able to maintain a lot of these low monument signs. But now you're having larger development requests. You're getting the auto mall potentially. You're getting, our large grocery anchored commercial developments. They want more visibility. So the question is, what's our value as a city? Do we want to provide that? Do we want to give them that greater visibility on Mountain View and Redwood Road? Or, or do we stick with that planned center sign? Commission heard that and is making a recommendation that basically we do what we're doing in other areas along Mountain View corridor and start to extend that to other development partners. But that's a value quest. That's a value issue, right? You need to make a decision. Do you think that's the right direction for commercial development of the city? Provide more visibility? Is this the right balance? Or Do you want to see something different?
And we're not assigning the areas tonight, right? We're just proving.
So this is the text, and then the very next item is the map amendment.
It is the
Now,
map.
if you
Okay.
wish to revisit that issue or all of it together, we just need direction, of course. If you decide to table this, we just want to know what you'd like to see next.
I know if I'm a large commercial person, visibility is essential. And if you don't have a sign, it's harder for people to know you're there. You have to have a sign. If we want to entice and bring those kind of developments in, I think it's really difficult to say, sorry, you can come, but you can't have a sign. But, so that's what we have to decide. And I believe on these major corridors, Mountain View, Redwood, Porter Rockwell, those are major thoroughfares through our community, and I don't know how we say no. I mean, we say no by saying no, but I think that's the path we have to go.
And you can tell you guys taken a lot of time going through this, figuring out what heights and distances and square footages, so.
Restrictions are they're all there.
Yep.
And it's the same as the complaints we've just recently received on that other sign. It's not because the requirements aren't there, it's just that there was an oversight, we need to fix it. We're grateful to the public to bring it to the attention to say, hey, this is too bright, so we can get it fixed and addressed and in compliance.
And that property owner, once we alerted them to the issue, they were very responsive.
Yeah.
They totally understood what our concerns were, and they want to address that problem.
Yeah.
I just wish constituents knew who to contact prior to Facebook, so.
Most people don't. That is the
Even if they do know.
That's where they like to complain.
We all know who they contact.
Yeah.
Do you want a motion?
Let's do a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2022-31, amending Title 10 of the Harriman City Code to create a major corridor sign overlay zone for large commercial, manufacturing, and mixed-use developments adjacent to high-volume vehicular traffic corridors.
Second.
Motion by Sherry, second by Jared. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. That motion carries. 10.3, Mr. Malloy.
So this one will be brief. Really, again, we're just looking at the application of that zoning overlay on the city zoning map. So again, this is the summary that we shared with you as far as what is being applied or the effect of what might be applied here. And then we've mapped out in your draft ordinance all of these locations as far as these are the properties that would qualify for the overlay based on the standards that you just adopted or recommended approval of. And again, Planning Commission, I apologize, I forgot there are detailed maps, just like in your packet. If you want to look and talk about any of these tonight, you can. But the commission did recommend a 5-0 approval of this.
Any concerns with any of the areas outlined? Okay, I'll look for a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-32, authorizing the zoning map amendment to add the major corridor sign overlay zone to the properties which front and abut a Mountain View corridor, Redwood Road and Porter Rockwell Boulevard for commercial, manufacturing, and mixed-use development, zone C1, C2, M1, M2, MU2, OP, and AMSD.
Motion by Teddy,
Second.
second by Sherry. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10.4, discussion and consideration of a resolution expressing support of the recommended U-111 alignment alternative. Blake? Oh, Bryce is going to handle it.
Handed it off.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up from our last meeting, the joint meeting where we kind of discussed this issue. So I'll be pretty quick. Last on the agenda, we'll try to get through this as quick as we can. So the area that we're discussing, as we discussed last time, is the realignment of U-111 or SR-111 from 118th South down south of there, and basically determining where the terminus of that road should be based on our transportation master plan and the models that we've run. And so the purpose of this is to establish a preferred alignment for U-111 and adopt a public resolution of that preferred alignment that we can have an official city stance on, an official city position on how we would like that road to be realigned. As you know, UDOT is in the process of the environmental study right now and has been funded to continue that study, continue the design, and to build that road. So one of the questions last time we talked about was just the timeline. So down here we kind of have a little bit of a timeline. December 2021 is when it kicked off. The draft SES, that's the state environmental study or statement, it should be done here in November, and then they will have a public hearing and a final statement on environmental statement in March of next year. And then the way that it has been designated in legislature and in the UDOT plan is design and construction hasn't been broken up, but from 2024 to 2027. And so in this process, when we heard of the project, we started doing modeling on our own, doing our own analysis of, as we're updating our transportation master plan, we're running these models already. So we built some scenarios into our draft master plan that we're working on right now and looked at different scenarios as we discussed last time. So I'll run through those scenarios real quick. So the yellow is what we're considering. The red roads are kind of not being considered in this discussion. They will be considered in our transportation master plan update, but we're looking at the yellow portion here. And so the essential question that we're looking at is, where do we want 118th, or sorry, U111 from 118th south to tie down into? So is that into the heart of Olympia? Is that into 126th or Harriman Boulevard? Or is that and I should say alternative 2 on the right is what we kind of visualized U111 doing probably 5 or 6 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then, and that's a direct tie-in to 7300 West and Main Street. To accommodate that, it would put a lot of traffic on Harriman Main Street unless there was also a additional connection to 134th. So, as we discussed, we modeled all of these, and in general, none of these fail. None of these are failing options for traffic. They all will move traffic. There are some pros and cons to each one. The biggest benefit to the baseline alternative is that we create a little bit more distribution throughout the city with this tie-in. So 118th South, Harriman Boulevard, Harriman Main Street, and 134th is the most balanced as far as arterial traffic goes east-west in Harriman with that option. Part of that is you have a lot of connections.
Sorry, with which option?
The baseline.
The baseline. So, yeah, so it balances it out north and south, but that east-west travel. And I can explain that. So alternative 1, as you can imagine, pumps a lot of traffic straight into 126 South or Harriman Boulevard. Alternative 2, it sends a lot of that traffic more south and to Harriman Main Street and 134th. So 134th is receiving a lot of that traffic. So the connection into 6400 West allows traffic to travel up to 118th South to Harriman Boulevard, south to Main Street, and south to 134th. That northwest connection is very vital because it hits all of our arterial in a succinct path. So it hits 118, it hits 126 or Harriman Boulevard, it hits this Olympia Main Street, it hits Silver Sky Drive, which is a future road, and then it hits Main Street, and it also hits 134th. So that's part of the reason why this allows traffic, and this area in general wants to travel to the north east, as you can
So,
imagine.
Do you have the traffic study, Bryce?
What was
Do
that?
you have the traffic study one slide or no?
I don't think we have the
All right, you
traffic.
can stay on that one, because all the meetings I've been in with the traffic people and everything, the Southwest deal that we did, this based on sort of to me, it looks like Olympia Hills wants some state-funded money for that road. That's what that screams. And dead-ending a major highway, like it just tees into 6,400.
So, yeah, this was the original. This is a better image of it.
How does that help east-west?
So the state highway would actually terminate at 126, that Harriman Boulevard.
It doesn't, it's not really 126. It goes
Yeah, it doesn't
down
even
into
connect
Olympia
to
and
it.
then goes up. You'd have to turn at an intersection there and go up to 126. The idea is to make people stop at an intersection to bring commercial into that thing, I think is.
And it slows down traffic.
Slows down traffic, but if you want traffic to flow and move on it like a freeway, it needs to go like a freeway. It needs to
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're considering like the northwest of here, alternative one gets you from point A to point B quicker, right? So if like the Kennecott area and the Daybreak area, alternative one provides that connection to 126 more directly.
Yeah.
The baseline alternative, although, yeah, that's a good point. It's not necessarily the quickest from that northwest of Olympia to Mountain View. This was considering more Olympia and south, basically Harriman city
I get
boundaries.
that we want to try to tie it to Olympia and try to get some commercial there for Harriman. But
Yeah,
for traffic, I mean, let's be real here.
Do we want to be a pass-through city on that aspect and just whatever comes down north-south of U-111 straight to 126?
I want traffic to flow is what I want. Well, like, we have such a mess already.
So looking at the traffic studies that they did for each one of these alternatives, the volume doesn't change for that road, whether it's here, here, or here. So putting it down that's the perfect point. Do we, in our MDA with Olympia, do we want that commercial center north out of Harriman? If we push it down, we have the same amount of traffic going at the same location, adding maybe a few seconds to the commute. But then you get the commercial center because the MDA either, if the intersection's out of the city, the commercial center goes elsewhere. If it's in the city, the commercial center goes here.
Alternative one is in the city.
So Bryce's last slide is, they looked at it and they tied 7300 West right in. And so this consultant that we hired is the Daybreak, the same consultant that South Jordan uses. And one of the first things they told Bryce and I when we met with them was the prevailing traffic pattern for the southwest corner of the valley is from the southwest to the northeast. So everything we were trying to accomplish through Daybreak and through Harriman was to make that traffic flow from the southwest to the northeast. And so this alignment pushes the traffic in that direction. And that was the basis behind it. I just wanted to jump in. Sorry, Bryce, but those were some things that I just thought should be mentioned.
I'll just say, everything that I've been through looking at this for the last several years, I mean, if we do that, and I get the desire to try to facilitate some commercial in Olympia, but let's really do the math there. If we do that, an east-west expressway will never, ever happen. It just will not. Like, in my constituents, far more concerned about quality of life of moving traffic than sitting in traffic for hours to try to get in and out of here. And most of what's happening is to the southeast, right? I get maybe right now that you still might be northeast, but everything that's happening is southeast. Like, I get what I get what this is trying to accomplish from one hand, but to me, it's defeating the purpose of moving traffic. And to me, that has to be I mean, U-111 is supposed to be, is a highway, right? There's plans for it to be a highway further that direction, we're turning it into a surface street to try to get a grocery store. That makes no sense to me.
So yeah, it is the perspective of what's your destination, right? This recommended alternative provides better connectivity in Harriman City, but it doesn't provide the pass-through corridor that you're kind of speaking about that bypasses the city, right?
I don't necessarily know.
I would say it doesn't bypass the city. It might bypass a little corner of Olympia Hills, but it takes people right through Harriman City and facilitates everything that we're doing with the auto mall and everything.
The alternative that UDOT is looking at is extending Harriman Boulevard or 126 directly west and the U-111 directly south. So just like a perpendicular. So you'd still have that intersection, most likely, that slows you down, a major intersection that slows you down. It would not be in Harriman. So I guess to your point, the slowdown isn't in Harriman anymore at that intersection, but that would be a major intersection, just like this one in Olympia would also be a major intersection.
What's the current speed limit of Bacchus? 55?
60,
65.
60.
Yeah, it depends. The southern end, I don't think it's that high. I think it's 50. Yeah, 50.
I just drive regardless of the speed limit, but I assume that's still going to maintain through that until you get to that interchange or intersection. I guess it'll probably slow down to 35 or something into the Olympia Hills or.
So yeah, so UDOT's planning a 5-lane road, and our 5-lane roads are either 40 or 35 in Harriman for the most part.
And I wonder how far out, because somehow we have to have that connectivity. If it comes down and it hits 126 and they widen that up and it's freeway-ish kind of down through there, that traffic's going to keep flowing, and then there truly ends up being some east-west connectivity through there.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. And to that point, that alternative one, maybe if the priority is to push a expressway through 126th, alternative one gives you a little bit more traffic on that road, and therefore you could consider that as a more likelihood to get an expressway with this connection. In the end, it's only about 4,000 or 5,000 difference in cars, which doesn't change the roadway unless you're right on the line of a 5-lane to a 7-lane to an expressway. In the big scheme of things, that's not that much of a change when you're talking about 7 lanes versus an expressway.
We have the right-of-way preserved on Harriman Boulevard for a 5, 6, 7 lane.
So we could pull off a 7-lane. The 7-lane with the way that it's built right now would look like 134th right at Mountain View, where you have 7 lanes, but there's no shoulder. There is actually right-of-way to widen. We have, I think, about 15 feet on the back of curb on each side of the road on Harriman Boulevard. So it could widen. It would be a very substantial project, but we're seeing that need in 2050.
This makes no sense whatsoever.
It makes sense if what you're trying to do is just dump all that traffic all through different areas of Harriman. But if you're truly trying to use U-111 as what I think it's intended to do, is be a highway, then make it a highway and make it continue to go over. They're already talking about doing the section between Mountain View and Bangor. And so let's just get it connected. I know as a resident, I would prefer that to have some connectivity and have something to jump on and go, because it's a nightmare to go from my house on 7300. It takes me 20 minutes to get to Mountain View.
Well, and we're talking about my backyard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, putting free bay basically in my backyard, but right now, the way things are, it takes me 20 minutes to get to Bangor.
And then 20 minutes to get downtown.
So
right? Add in all this traffic. I mean, come on.
So I think these are all valid concerns. I think what you just hit there, all the traffic, The proposal right now is to try and spread that out because there is no true east-west corridor. So I liken this a little bit to.
Problem, there isn't one.
So it's a little bit like a storm drain. If you have a catch basin overflowing, you can make the catch basin bigger, but ultimately your problem is probably all the way down at your discharge. So when we look at our east-west flow, it's not really out on this end of the, people are seeing it, but that's not where the problem is. The problem is down at Mountain View, the 126 going through there. And so we do have a study going on with the state looking at how to signalize and move that. Ultimately, that's where the solution has to come that direction.
So here's the thing, being part of those discussions, the connection between Bangor and Mountain View, we had to fight tooth and nail just to get it on a plan, right? I mean, the chances of being funded anytime soon, especially with baseline alternative, slim to none, right? If ever.
I don't know the baseline alternative is going to change that because that is a Riverton issue.
The thing is the demand, right? So if there is an actual path to connect them even to U111 and you have all these other interested parties who are powerful that want that connection, then that's more likely to happen. Not just from Mountain View to Bangor, but beyond, right? There is a longer end game to this, to getting those things done, and we've seen it with other parts in the valley where those things got on the map and nothing ever happened because there was never a will to do this part of it.
Yeah, and I just, every time I drive to the dump, I just see more and more and more houses right along the U111. All I see is that traffic going to continue to increase, and I really honestly don't believe that they're all just going to go north, especially with what we're seeing all developing down in this corner. I believe that as we continue to see up in West Jordan, just every day, if you go along there, just new houses.
And people that are trying to move through, and I mean, if with that alignment, I mean, really think about this. We're going to entice people to shorten their drive time and use 118th rather than go past 126, T-bone into 6400, and then have to backtrack. Right?
Say that again.
So they'll hit 118th south.
Right, so look at how this lines up. 126 is here, right? It doesn't connect with it. It goes past it, ambles through Olympia, right? And then T-bones into 6400, and then they have to try to back. Like, that's not gonna happen. They're gonna go here.
When you hit the intersection of
We end up,
126.
instead of them passing through Harriman here, they miss us all together here.
Are the other entities looking at these options? Have they been publicized outside of this, or?
So, no, not, so I know that South Jordan, Daybreak, Rio Tinto all have their own interests, right? And Harriman has their own, Olympia has their own. And we've heard discussions of what they want, but there's nothing that's been publicized yet of what their official positions are.
There have been a couple meetings with the technical group with UDOT. UDOT's environmental studies going on for this right now. And this baseline alternative is one of the options that UDOT's looking at in their environmental study.
The road alignment in Olympia Hills, but even the road alignment coming south still, or coming east still into 6400? Or do they even take that into consideration?
The way they're looking at it, this is maybe shown a little incorrectly because the road after it crosses 126 becomes a narrower road. So that intersection will be a major intersection that pushes people going southbound onto 126.
Hopefully to 126.
With like a dual left. And so, yeah.
And we've seen a lot of those dual lefts or even dual rights in those other, like going down Redwood or Mountain View or 21 South, all those.
So. And the purpose for this item tonight is a resolution to say what is the preferred alternative for UDOT to consider in their study. I think they showed about 4 or 5 alternatives in their working group that we had a couple weeks ago.
And we would love to be the front runner in that.
And so we were wanting to put this resolution forward to say, this is what our transportation consultant has recommended, and we recommend that as well.
Unfortunately, we can't. No, we can't at this time. Thank you, though. Oh, you're okay. Thank you, though, for.
And I will reiterate, all of the scenarios none of these intersections failed, right? So technically, all of the traffic flowed. We didn't have failing intersection. We didn't have failing capacities. They all moved traffic, right? The consideration of 126 being the major arterial versus spreading out the traffic to all of our arterials, 118th, Harriman Boulevard, Main Street, and 134th. I guess that's the discussion that's being had, right? Do we want to focus it on 126 and put it all on one corridor, or do we want to spread it out?
And I go back, I mean, that's your traffic counts that you showed at the joint meeting is what really drew me to this one, because this is the most balanced. I mean, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not an expert on this. I've got to trust those studies, and those studies showed the best.
It's like an appraisal.
To a degree, I mean, they're putting in what counts are going to be.
We haven't even talked to the other cities.
I don't disagree with the fact that this traffic studies show that this disperses traffic over a bigger area. 100% obvious, can see that. My concern is, in my vision, we need to have more of an east-west expressway. That's where we're so lacking. And if we do this, it'll never happen that way. I believe that you push the traffic and get people in and out of here. I believe the economic impact to our city will be great because it's 126 runs right through us. And I do believe that if I have to come and I can stop and turn here and miss all this mess and back up to here, I'm gonna turn here and have a straight shot. It's just the way my mind works, right? It's just like turn and go straight versus come down, go back, truck up, and go that way. Doesn't make any sense
Well,
to
and
me.
any hope of employment centers, recreation, et cetera, they want flow.
If I was driving it, that's the way I'd want it to be.
But I'm looking at somebody, but this is where I guess I disagree. I look at somebody that's going to be in the center of Olympia here. In the center there. This baseline is going to take them right up to that main, where 126th, Harriman Boulevard is going to be the main. That's pulling the main core of our future growth and bringing them up down Harriman Boulevard, which is going to be the main core.
They'll get there without this. Like U11 doesn't.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm not even thinking 111. I'm looking at the 7300 West Road that's going to go flow right into there. I'm just saying that.
Three models.
Will you go back one slide to where it has all three alternatives?
Yeah.
And these are just proposed interior roads.
Yeah, the red lines were pretty consistent, except for on the last one is that Harriman Boulevard ends up tying into 7300 West. That was one change. Everything else, the supporting roads were pretty consistent.
That if that's the objective, then do the third one.
Well, what's our purpose? Traffic flowing through the city at a greater rate and ease, or traffic disbursement? That's where I see the 2 points.
I've said my piece on that one.
Are we worried about citizens outside the community or citizens inside the community?
Well,
I think it'll both benefit.
I guess for me, the thing I too have been shouting about for every transportation thing, WFRC, those kind of things has been the lack of vision for east-west connection, period. We have nothing. And we're never going to have anything if we don't somehow make a point to say, look, Harriman's trying hard to push that kind of connectivity through. We're trying to gather some traffic in to get a thoroughfare for east-west connection. And to me, that's the way it flows. If I thought that we're not going to have, if I thought all we're trying to do is get Olympia people up and out to UN11, maybe it'd be a different discussion. And if I thought that there wasn't going to be a massive amount of additional growth to the north of us, that will probably use this to come south and get out of here. And I just cringe at thinking of just placing all that all through the city. I think it needs to have I think we need to have some sort of an expressway, east-west. And to me, 126 is the only option. 134th, we didn't preserve enough right away on 134th to do it there.
Like this exact discussion is why it hasn't happened anywhere else in the valley. Right? Because each entity said, well, we want to protect our little corner. And so there's no, it's never going to happen anywhere else.
Right, and Harriman Boulevard, we did preserve the corridor, but 134th we didn't. We can't expand that to expressway.
Yeah, that's my concern with alternative two, is you're going to push a lot of people to
Okay,
134th, and we've not planned,
No,
we have
that's
not
never
planned for
gonna
that.
work.
The main corridor is going to be 126, it's going to be Harriman Boulevard.
Or else 118th, and we only share that with
If you want to think
Central.
about coming through the city, that comes through the city to the auto mall, to everything
Yeah.
that we've done. Like getting a grocery store in Olympia Hills is not important.
Well, I don't think that's
see, and
I don't think this is gonna change that. They're gonna get one anyways, but I don't think any road alignment's gonna really impact the commercial unless it's not through Olympia. Or that intersection's not in Olympia, or at least half of it.
One thing I do wish we had, the last meeting we had, all of the projected volumes. You can look at that 126 number between Bangor and Mountain View. That's 93,000 ADT. That is ridiculously high, as we've been talking about. This is with not tying directly into 126. I think the study that's ongoing right now will identify that 126, and this, again, personal opinion, models can show this, but over time, that no matter what, improvements on 126 are needed. Even if we did alternative 2, where we try to shift people down to 134th, that 90,000 ADT or traffic per day is enormous, enormous. You can see 134th is projected in 2050 at about 50,000, so nearly double of what's on 134th is projected even with this recommended alternative. Like I said, the connection into 126 has about a 3,000 to 5,000 difference. In that big of a scheme, in that big of a number, that is a tiny amount of a difference, if that makes sense. So again, this is more projecting than being able to prove that this would happen. But in my opinion, no matter what scenario we select, UDOT's gonna be forced to look at 126, especially between Mountain View and Bangor.
I think they already committed to doing that.
That study is underway too. It's a separate study. We actually are having them include all the way out to Harriman Main Street on that. And I think their first meeting's tomorrow on that.
Awesome.
Anyway, I don't know.
I didn't see this being our big item tonight.
Yeah.
It's a little split.
I think we need to have some conversations with the surrounding cities before we do anything.
Is this a timing issue? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, very
Part of
much
it's
so.
to get in front of UDOT so that they understand what our concerns are and where we would like the road to go. The state, in this last session, they are going to take, once 126th, however it connects in, they will take that as a state road. So this is going to become their thing to deal with.
It makes sense. It makes sense to put it to 126 then, yeah.
Well, any way it connects through. So any of those alternatives, when 126, because the way it's written is it comes through 126 wherever it connects with U111. So it doesn't matter how U111 connects, they will take that through. And so those improvements at 90 some odd thousand vehicles a day, they're going to have to deal with it, whether you push another 3,000 or 4,000 cars on it or not. Our major north-south is still going to be Mountain View. So we need to figure out the freeway connection from Bangor to Mountain View first. That's probably the key piece before you push any more down Harriman.
I do think that we did a good job of having some vision to preserve the corridor on Harriman Boulevard for that purpose, so that we do have an expressway through there. And our major commercial stuff will still get hit. Our auto mall and everything that was on those pictures of the signs, these people can come right there and dump on Mountain View, and they're going to hit all of our
Guys,
major
can you
commercials
keep the
anyway.
sidebar, please?
So our internal commercial won't be negatively affected by this, in my opinion, but our major commercial stuff, it will still flow that way, but it still gets people in and out of here on more of an expressway. That's what I think. If I had an expressway and I had an employment center on Rio Tinto, I might be more inclined to drive to Harriman. Because that's the other thing. We're not just talking about getting people out of here. What about people coming in?
Coming in.
If I'm coming over from Draper and I'm coming over to work at Bullfrog, maybe I just come on this expressway and hit U-11 and boom, I'm there. I'm not stopping at 800 traffic lights on the way here.
Well, that's, to me, that's
Yeah,
why.
and yeah, so, oh, sorry. I think we jumped out of that somehow.
Ran out of time.
So there's about, so look at the numbers there. 118 is kind of covered by the turn movements, but huge traffic. 126, about 30,000. A 5-lane road can handle that. And a 7-lane, when you get to 30, anything over 34, a 7-lane is needed. So a 7-lane road, which we have the capability of doing it, can handle the traffic in Harriman. It's east of Main Street, where everything converges. Main Street converges, Mountain View converges, and then you have Bangor to the east. That's where your huge corridor numbers are. So if you're going to get an expressway, most likely it'll be from Bangor to Mountain View. We would push to do some improvement to get that all the way to Main Street, but it's unlikely you would get an expressway where you're not stopping at lights west of Main Street on any of these scenarios.
Would we need to put lights on Harriman Boulevard if we have this much traffic?
So yeah, most of those major intersections have traffic lights. Main Street, Anthem, 60th, 64th isn't built yet. So those major intersections have traffic lights already, except for 64th because it's not built yet.
You're definitely not John neighborhood to neighborhood across 126 if that traffic flow is that high.
Yeah. So those intersections obviously are going to be busy, but they would be similar to the ones on 134th right now, right?
I think one thing to look at too is you can see these intersection turning for peak hour AM and PM peaks. If you look at the intersection that's in question, the track back intersection, you can see where 7300 West ties in. That straight through traffic is 750 cars in the AM peak and 650 in the PM. That's the highest volume you have in the peak hour. Even the north-south turning left is basically half of that. So this is kind of telling about that predominant traffic pattern from the southeast to the northwest. So that was, I mean, it's all the traffic modeling stuff, but it is telling that, you know, that's the intersection configuration somehow that you want to have to get those right-hand, left-hand turns. Otherwise, that traffic, if 73 does not tie in at that location, it's turning down Main Street, it's turning down to 64th, it's coming in those other directions, coming out of the Rose Basin area to get up to the north.
Will you go back to the 3 thingy? I don't understand what you're saying. It looks like 7300 will still go into that. There'll be a light somewhere there.
That next image, or the next one, they changed 73 from the baseline to tie in because it was going up and tying at a different location. So they were backtracking at that point.
And I mean, we just talked about 7300 today with that road. We're just going to build a smaller road, we said tonight. That 7300.
Yeah. I'm assuming alt 1, the radius on that is to make the proper turns around those impacted. So, I mean, I know it's all impacted now, but.
Yeah, the kind of sweeping motion there, the original goal of this was actually to avoid those impacted soils. On here, it looks like those green kind of blobs, kind of look like a set of lungs there. So that's why, that was from an old land use map of Rio Tinto's. Since then, it sounds like in the environmental study, those soils are much more expansive than just what's shown here, and that there isn't necessarily a corridor, like a free corridor from those impacted soils, so that impacts almost that whole area. So the exact alignment isn't really what we were going for, though we did show trying to go around those soils. It sounds like UDOT's found that those soils are everywhere, and there's really no avoiding them. So what they were looking at is, instead of sweeping, just going straight south from there, and Harriman Boulevard going straight west from there, and just having a perpendicular intersection just west of the top of Olympia, if that makes sense.
Could you have a similar road to, or baseline connecting into 126 directly?
Do you mean alignment-wise, just where it
Yeah,
goes
just alignment,
east a little bit more?
visually-wise, yeah, yeah.
No, we did not model, but I will say the actual alignment of whether it went center, west, or east of that impacted soils didn't seem, at least in the model, to impact traffic much.
Is it less or is it more cost-effective to build a straight road rather than a windy road?
Yeah, in general.
So Bryce, these three aren't the ones you were asking about. It's actually the next one. Was that what
Yeah,
we were
so
proposing to
baseline
UDOT?
was, like, what it was baseline, okay, if we do this, let's see what the numbers are. Alternative 1, alternative 2 were different connection points, and then alternative 3, let's call it, is the same as the baseline, but that alignment has changed a little bit. It's, the connection point's the same. From 118 down to Olympia Main Street and 126 intersection. But yes, this is the recommended alternative, just because since we ran those models, it's been discussed that the impacted soils are not, we're not able to go around them. So that's why it's been updated to show like it is, where that the coming south and just making that turn makes more sense than trying to avoid the soils when we wouldn't be able to avoid them.
So wouldn't you just come straight down your little dot? What's the dotted line?
The dotted line, I think, is an old Rio Tinto plan, land use plan that, or Kennecott land use plan that was part of the study. I'm not sure exactly how, we've heard that this land use map is much outdated and not to take any heed to the land use that you actually see on there.
Yeah, so
An alternative that's being studied in the environmental straight through, but they're also working with all the property owners, and property owner there is not wanting that road to go right through, bisect that property.
Who owns that chunk, the gray one? Don't know.
That's Doug Young.
Oh, got ya. He
And
doesn't-
so I know South Jordan also said they didn't want it coming straight through there.
South Jordan doesn't like anything of where that yellow line's shown right now. They had one shown where the dashed line is, and they had one shown over where the black line ties in with the red line, just east of the gray property, which would have cut through Daybreak. And so, yeah, South Jordan mentioned in the meeting that they didn't favor either one of those.
Anyway, so what's the next step there?
Yeah, I guess what we were asking is if we want to adopt a public resolution on an alignment that we have an official city stance. So that's, I guess, what the decision here is tonight.
And we should point out, ultimately, UDOT will make this decision.
Right.
So this is really, if you want to, if you don't feel like you can, there's no harm in not doing anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Consensus. It's actually what I'm in favor of is just that, and working with the adjoining cities. And I mean, there so much of what we did the last few years, getting the cities to work together for this exact purpose, goes out the window if we all splinter and try to preserve what we think is our own best interest. Like, we need actual transportation infrastructure on the west side of the valley, let alone this corner, right? And so the long, to me, the long game is traffic flow in and out, supporting auto mall and everything along there, but then also having that flow to access recreation, right? That this is where the access will come from if we're gonna bring people in, as well as any other opportunities out there.
But I think going to those meetings with a clear consensus from the council would be more beneficial than just going to a working group of other cities and entities. Because I don't think they have a true vision of what's best for them.
As elected officials, because that's where this will get decided. That everybody will have their little studies and things. Where Sherry and I have been through this with WFRC and others. It doesn't matter at that point. It doesn't matter what data you throw in front of them. It's going to be a political decision, and they'll pick the data they want to back it up.
But
So
if we
need
go
to
with a
work
vision,
we need to work with South Jordan's mayor and others. What's an overall goal that we can go to UDOT? Because together we'll get something done. If we splinter, good luck.
And in my mind, for the region, the overall objective is east-west connection. That's in my, and I understand what you're saying about disseminating it through Harriman or whatever, but I really believe that this has to be more of a regional approach and say, how does it get a better express type of feel coming in and out here? Because these numbers are great, but they'll change. I mean, every time you turn around, the density changes, the impact changes. You know, this is just your best guess on what currently this is how they're going to develop this kind of thing out. We don't know. We don't know what Rio Tinto is going to do with any of their property. This is the best guess at what we think is going to happen right now. And my guess is that that road is going to continue to build. The west is the only place there's property, and they're going to pack as many in and as tight as possible, and they have to have a way to get in and out of this region. And I just believe that the better...
North-south is not.
I just really believe that that's why that was preserved, that corridor on Harriman Boulevard, was to try and say we did our part on trying to do the express in east-west. And then that does put some pressure on Riverton and everybody else to say, yeah, we need to make sure that this happens through here because we're all playing ball for the region. Opinion. And so it's hard to do what you're saying, Teddy, because I don't know that we have a solid consensus of the four of us.
Not tonight, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the more we talk about it, it does make sense to align that road with 126 for that purpose of the east-west corridor. But I think we need to have a consensus before we go sit in those meetings and raise our concerns and bring other cities with us that are on the same vision path. I just don't believe that all the surrounding cities have our best interest or the state's best interest on moving traffic and continue, keeping those corridors flowing.
Right, but I believe that when we work together, when we really just sit down, because we watched it happen with the mayor.
Say the Southwest mayors need to talk about
We really watched it happen, and
Yeah.
when we just put aside our own biases and says, what does our region really need, and how can we fight together to get the money to make it happen? You're right. I think that there's going to be intersections there for now, but that doesn't mean in 20 years from now there's going to continue to be an intersection there. They can make that into an expressway, so there's not lights. It just depends on what ends up happening, and we just simply don't know what's going to happen.
I would recommend you just table this tonight, and then if you want, we can bring back the data that was on there. We can do other things, or you have an opportunity to talk about how you want to approach it. But it doesn't sound like you're going to get to a consensus. And again, it doesn't really harm us. We'll just tell we didn't come to a consensus.
We'll just keep going through the environmental process. I mean,
Like I say, I think you need 5 of you here to be able to make a decision of this magnitude. So my recommendation is just table it, and we'll bring it back in the future.
Okay.
Yep.
Make a motion to continue this item to a future meeting.
Motion by Sherry.
Second.
Second by Teddy. Sherry.
Yes.
Teddy.
Yes.
Jared.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Motion will be continued. Future meetings, Planning Commission meeting, July 21st. Our next regularly scheduled council meeting will be on August 10th. Events, summer musical, make sure you get out and see Cinderella still.
Amazing.
A few more nights until Monday. Monday night is the last night. Great production going on out there. Farmers market and food trucks on Monday night out front here from 5 to 9. Harriman Moto X, July 29th and 30th. Possibly, nothing officially. We do have a truth and taxation on August 3rd, and possibly a special work meeting that night, to be determined for sure. Okay, look for a motion. We do have a closed session tonight, so I'll look for a motion to temporarily recess and go into closed.
I'll make a motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purposes to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated 524205.
Motion by Sherry.
Second.
Second by Teddy. Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And a vote yes. Thank you, everybody.
Just because
We had an hour conversation in the work meeting about that. You knew it was going to be